On the night of December 7th, 2017, the gaming community was pleasantly surprised when a new game by FromSoftware was teased at the Game Awards with the tagline, "Shadows Die Twice." It had been a year since the release of Dark Souls 3 and 9 months since the last DLC, so the community had been eagerly anticipating an announcement.
All right now, as we count down to the show, we've got another world premiere. This is really special, and it comes to us all the way from Japan.
The FromSoftware logo alone was enough to send the Souls community into a frenzy. To provide clearer context regarding the excitement the teaser brought to Souls fans, here are 2 reaction videos from popular YouTubers. The first reaction video is by Maximilian Dude.
All right, here we go.
Another world premiere.
All right.
This is really special, and it comes to us all the way from Japan.
From Japan! This is good. I like Japan. I like things that come out of Japan, but not go in. Things that go in, very weird. It's Dark Souls! Oh my god. What? Oh, fuck you! Oh, fuck you.
And that's all you get, a little tease of the next project.
Are you fucking shitting me? Was that Bloodborne 2?
For that little tease of what they're working on next.
Are you fucking shitting me? Are you shitting me? Are you shitting on my face right now? Are you fucking shitting in my mouth, in my eyes, on my ears? Are you fucking shitting me? Did they just tease Bloodborne 2?
As well, and of course we've got the Game Awards on some really amazing offers for gaming hardware and accessories. You'll hear all about it. And the Game Awards Orchestra.
Are you shitting? Are you shitting me? Did they just tease Bloodborne 2? Are you shitting me? Shitting me? Shitting me?
Enjoy the Game Awards.
No, Jeff. Can we talk? Can we spend the entire next 2 hours talking about what just happened? Can we spend the next 2 hours going over every... Dude, the moment I heard an audio cue, I was like, man, that's some really good audio quality. It almost seems like it's Bloodborne, and then FromSoftware showed up in the...
The second reaction video is by EasyAllies.
It's Death Stranding. No, that's
funny. They had so many other options in the Glowing Forza. Like, okay.
Here we go.
Ghost of Tsushima?
Sounds like
you
it.
might be right.
Yes. No.
Brad.
Shadows die twice.
What is it?
Tomorrow!
Members of the community began analyzing the meaning of the teaser trailer. However, one of the most notable figures in this regard is the master of Souls lore, Vaatividya. Here is a section of his expert analysis on the trailer, with most of his speculations later confirmed to be accurate when more information about the game was released.
FromSoftware's new project, Shadows Die Twice. They've given us 13 seconds of footage to work with, but in a way, the less there is, the more there is to talk about. For example, have you noticed the Japanese script in the background, or the Oriental instruments? What about those shavings in the corners, or the chisel that likely caused them? Which components of this mechanism move first? Is this phrase a name or a tagline? And will all my theories be proven wrong in a day or 12 months? listen on, and let's find out. Now, everyone's first impressions, including mine, was that this looks like Bloodborne 2, right? In fact, my first thought was that this mechanism looks a lot like a trick weapon, Goemon's long-handled scythe in particular.
The theories from the Souls community can be categorized into three. The first theory, widely shared by the majority, suggests that this teaser is for Bloodborne 2. If you recall, in Dark Souls, we had Marvelous Chester, a character that many believe to be a reference to Bloodborne due to his attire, essentially hinting at the Victorian setting of the future game. In contrast, in Bloodborne, we have Old Hunter Yamamura, whom many believe to be a reference to FromSoftware's upcoming game, implying that the game will have a setting in Japan. The second theory, which actually came closest to the truth, is that the teaser is for a new entry in the Tenchu franchise, a ninja game series created by FromSoftware across various platforms. Some of the reasons for this speculation include the kanji in the background, the instruments used in the trailer, and the word shadow, possibly referring to ninjas. Finally, the last theory suggests that the teaser is for a future Shadow Tower game. When the Project Beast trailer was shown, many believed it to be a Shadow Tower game, with some considering it a spiritual successor. Additionally, having the word shadow in the tagline also adds weight to this speculation. One day after the teaser trailer, Yasuhiro Kitao posted a message on Twitter to reassure fans that they wouldn't have to wait a whole year for more information, even though the announcement was made early. If you recall from our Bloodborne video, he was in charge of Bloodborne's marketing and communication at Sony. Later on, he transitioned to FromSoftware as a promotion and community manager for their games. For several months, FromSoftware maintained complete silence after Kitao's tweet. However, on June 10, 2018, during Microsoft's E3 press conference, the new game was finally unveiled, bearing the title Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.
So you're awake. Looks like death is not your fate, just yet. Some time has passed since I found you. Your master still lives. They'll soon make use of his bloodline. The limb you have lost will give way to something more useful. You'll learn to appreciate its worth. Your death won't come easily.
The gameplay reveal sparked a surge of excitement and anticipation among Souls fans. Here are some comments from various forums where fans shared their enthusiasm. Wow, I'm genuinely hyped for this. Combat looks very fluid and interesting. I'm digging this setting and the enemies so much. So excited. Looks amazing. The focus on single player is really exciting and welcome, especially for me. I can't wait to see what Miyazaki and the rest of the team at From have in store for us with this. I can't get enough of this trailer. Some of the most impressive particle effects I've ever seen in a game. Praise the sun! To gain further insight into the community's excitement for Sekiro, here's a well-known Souls content creator, EpicNameBro, sharing his reaction video to the E3 trailer.
What's up, y'all? I am Marcus, also known as ENB, and FromSoftware has finally unveiled their new title. It is Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. They've put up a new trailer for E3 2018. If you haven't checked it out, I recommend going somewhere on the internet. Just Google, it's everywhere. Watch that first and then come back here. This is going to be a reaction video, just me explaining my thoughts on the trailer that we've seen. First of all, my first reaction to this trailer is, thank God it's a new world. It's a new world. It's a new IP. Some people are going to say maybe this is actually a spiritual successor to some older FromSoft titles, and that it's a possibility. But the point is, they have the creative freedom to do whatever the heck they want with this one. There's no expectation. This isn't Bloodborne 2. This isn't Dark Souls 4. And I do understand that a lot of people out there were wanting Bloodborne 2 specifically. A lot of people were really hyped up about that. And I would say that this is me. I personally think that Bloodborne 2 is still a possibility. If I was Sony, I would pay for Bloodborne 2 to be a PlayStation 5 launch title. That would be me if I was Sony. I think there's plenty of demand for it. I think Sony knows that it's valuable, and I think that FromSoft would probably do it. Like, we've seen that they've had a pretty good they've had a pretty good working relationship with Sony recently with Bloodborne, Demon's Souls, maybe not so much. So I still think that that's a possibility out there. But for me personally, I feel like Dark Souls 1 was great. I feel like Dark Souls 2's story isn't as bad as a lot of people think. I actually like it within itself as a standalone game. But the connections to Dark Souls 1 is where I feel like, okay, it's just tacked on it. They're just forcing two things together that don't necessarily belong together. And then Dark Souls 3, I didn't really get into the story as much because it tries to be the glue that holds those games together. A lot of people feel differently about it, and that's totally fine. It's just my personal opinion. But I just feel like FromSoft is really at their best when they're creating something new. And a lot of people who are excited for something like Bloodborne 2, I feel like, Bloodborne, a lot of the big surprise and shock and amazement from Bloodborne was finding out that it's not gothic horror, that it's cosmic horror. Bam! Aliens and space gods and shit. Like, we already know that. So Bloodborne 2 wouldn't be able to shock you as much. Now, I'm sure Miyazaki's got his ways. He's got his ways. But, that's for me. So the first thing, just seeing that, okay, this isn't a sequel, this is a new thing. Yes, I'm happy about that.
A day after the gameplay reveal of Sekiro, Jeff Keighley conducted an interview with Yasuhiro Kitao, FromSoftware's marketing lead for the game, and Robert Conkey, the game producer from Activision.
And now we're going to talk about a game that may be familiar to you if you watch the Game Awards, because FromSoftware, the creators of Dark Souls and Bloodborne, had a new title that was just revealed yesterday in Microsoft's press conference. And here to talk about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is FromSoftware's Yasuhiro Kitao and Robert Conkey from Activision. Guys, first of all, Shadows Die Twice. We had that teaser with the arm at the Game Awards. A lot of speculation about what it was. Finally revealed yesterday as this incredible game, ninja-based sort of game. It's appropriate because we got Ninja coming up, live streamer Ninja. But tell us a bit about this project partnership with Activision, which I think was a surprise to a lot of folks as well. Why did From want to make this their next project?
Sure. そうですね。I'm not good at English, so
Yes, translate.
Robert translates.
Yep.
そうですね。なぜアクティビジョンがっていう大きい会社が僕らみたいなちっちゃい会社と組んでくれたのかちょっと分かんないんですけど、これからなんで僕らがアクティビジョンと組ませていただいたかっていうのをお話しします。
He said he has no idea why Activision would have interest in working with such a tiny unknown company such as his, but he'll give the best reasons he can.
いろいろな理由があるんですけども、一つ大きいのはアクティビジョンが制作支援をしてくださるっていうことがあって。それが我々がそのゲームを開発していく上でいい刺激になるんじゃないかっていうふうに考えたからです。
So one of the reasons is that they understood that Activision would be able to provide a lot of support to their development, and it could help them work on their titles in ways that it would help them in some ways to be able to get new references or new information from outside places. So it was kind of an interesting idea to work with a Western publisher as opposed to other ones.
It's worth noting that this interview involved Jeff, Yasuhiro, and Robert, all of whom played integral roles in Sekiro's journey, from its initial reveal and promotion to its eventual success in winning one of the most prestigious awards in the world of video games. This is the story of the making of Sekiro, and how it brought forth the creative genius of Hidetaka Miyazaki, resulting in one of the finest combat-based games ever. Join me as we delve into its development and uncover the captivating journey behind Miyazaki's fifth masterpiece. In December 2015, at the age of 41, Hidetaka Miyazaki was actively engaged as the game director for the final installment of the Dark Souls franchise, Dark Souls 3. Having recently finished the development of the Old Hunters DLC for Bloodborne in November, and with FromSoftware typically developing multiple titles concurrently, Miyazaki chose to commence work on a new IP in the last month of 2015. This new game would eventually be known as Sekiro. During an interview, the host inquired, "FromSoftware's newest project, Sekiro, has finally been announced. First, how did you come to develop this project?" Miyazaki explained, "This project began shortly after we concluded development on Bloodborne's DLC, around the end of 2015. During that time, we were still actively working on Dark Souls 3, and we had a few concepts for titles to pursue afterward. Given FromSoftware's history with projects like Ninja Blade, Otogi, and the Tenchu series from the third installment onward, we envisioned creating a more Japanese-style game in that vein. Freed from the constraints of our previous projects, this marked the first opportunity for myself and many of the younger developers at the studio to delve into crafting a Japanese-style game. We were eager to explore fresh ideas and embark on a new direction with this upcoming title." You might be curious about what Miyazaki and his team did once they settled on the idea for the new game. The next section will delve into how they presented the project proposal to various companies, and how they eventually formed a partnership with Activision as the game's producer. For now, let's delve into the origins of the title and the significance of its tagline. Let's begin with the title of the game, Sekiro. In an interview, the host inquired about the details of the title, stating, "Sekiro is written in kanji as lone wolf, correct?" Miyazaki explained, "Yes, it means one-armed wolf. It's the main character's nickname or something similar. A man who lost an arm but carries the ferocity of a wolf, that kind of feel. Since it's a Japanese-style game, we thought about the name starting from the kanji and ended up using the kanji 1, which interested us on a design, meaning, and feel level. Surprisingly, Activision, which isn't deeply involved in the field of kanji culture, was intrigued by this decision." In another interview, Robert Conkey commented on this, saying, "There is an old Japanese term for someone who is missing a limb, which is sekiwan. Seki is from that word. Ro means wolf. It translates to one-armed wolf, which is not the hero's name per se, but it describes him." The tagline, "Shadows Die Twice," posed a significant puzzle for the Souls community when the teaser trailer was unveiled in December 2017. In an interview, the host inquired about its meaning, stating, "In the trailer revealed at the Game Awards, there was an emphasis on the words, 'Shadows Die Twice.' Can you explain the meaning of that with regards to this project?" Miyazaki explained, "The phrase, 'Shadows Die Twice,' was originally a short catchphrase I designed for the trailer, but the publishing people really liked it and ended up making it the subtitle. But there's definitely significance behind it. Shadows is a metaphor for the essence of the ninja, and Die Twice is a reference to the idea of revival in the game's systems, as well as its philosophy. Also, it's a bit of a blunt message to the players that they're going to die a lot." When FromSoftware unveiled the gameplay trailer for Sekiro at E3 2018, fans not only learned about the title and nature of the game, but also discovered that it would be published by Activision. This revelation came as a significant surprise to the Souls community, given that the two companies couldn't be more different. It's almost like heaven and hell. FromSoftware is one of the most admired and beloved gaming companies in the world, if not the most beloved. In contrast, Activision is one of the most disliked and criticized gaming companies, ranking just below EA, considered the most hated gaming company. It's no wonder that members of the Souls community were expressing rage and panic about this unexpected partnership. Words alone might not fully convey the depth of the community's reaction to the Activision reveal. To truly understand what they felt during this announcement, let's take a look at this clip from FightinCowboy, reacting to the news that Sekiro would be published by Activision.
That's our new thing, that's what we saw in the trailer. Okay, so the hand is some kind of trick weapon. Instantly, what the fuck? What the fuck? This is what happens. This is what happens. See, hype train, you're like, oh fuck! Oh fuck! Trick hand weapon! Choo choo! All aboard the hype train! FromSoftware! Let's fucking go! Why? Why? Why is Activision involved in this? Why is Activision involved in this? Activision doesn't need to be involved in this. For a couple reasons here. One, Activision is known primarily for publishing multiplayer titles. This is not officially confirmed, but basically confirmed to be a single-player action RPG type style game. God of War-esque. I'm all about it. Activision, this is a message to you. Keep your grubby fucking fingers off of this game. I swear to God. If this game comes out and there's fucking microtransactions in it, I'm going to take a massive shit in a box and send it to Activision's headquarters. I swear it right now. And you know what? I'll probably get in fucking trouble. They'll probably go back and look at this video and be like, sir, we found the man who smelled shit into our office. That's a biohazard. Let's send in the SWAT team. I don't care. Fuck you. Don't you put microtransactions in this game. It better be the most hands-off fucking publishing I have ever heard of. They need to keep their fucking grubby hands away from it, because I do not like Activision. I don't like Activision. I think they have shitty business practices. I think most of their games are recycled shit. And if they fuck this up, I will never forgive them.
A fan from Reddit accurately summed up why fans hate Activision, saying, Activision is somewhat rightly hated due to taking iconic franchises and mutating them into games that lack the features that made those franchises iconic. Spyro was cannibalized into 10-year-old fodder, and Crash was left in the vault when Activision realized that creating the same game again in a different skin doesn't mean mega sales. To some, sales are all they care about. The criticism directed at Activision extends beyond Spyro or Crash, and includes numerous games under the umbrella of the gaming companies it has acquired. While I can't speak for these other games, I have first-hand experience with what Activision did to mutate one of the games I deeply care about, Diablo II. Diablo II stands out as one of the most beautifully designed games in gaming history, often regarded as one of the best and most addictive games ever. Crafted with passion and love, the game exhibits no predatory practices, despite its game mechanics being ripe for abuse. However, when Blizzard, now under the umbrella of Activision, created Diablo III, the game's creators introduced a real money auction house to a game centered around loot and the collection of weapons and items. Though this may be a distant memory for some, it triggered a substantial backlash at the time, leading to the game director being despised by Diablo fans and subsequently removed from the project, ultimately departing from Blizzard. In the same year that Sekiro was announced, Diablo Immortal was unveiled, and its creators faced boos from the audience.
The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
You can play on your tablet too.
Yes, it's also on the Switch.
While the creators may or may not share the same passion for their projects, there is a prevalent belief that Activision is driving this particular project, a blatant money grab intended to exploit the loyal fans of the Diablo franchise. Here is a short clip from BeastMod Player explaining how Activision earned its status as one of the most hated gaming companies, especially in light of an Activision game announced shortly after Sekiro.
Diablo Immortal released to PC on June 2nd. Its release caused mass outrage among the Diablo community because of the absolutely egregious microtransactions included in the game. The level of microtransactions in this game is probably worse than I've even seen EA release. On launch, it was rumored to take a little over $110,000 to max out a character in Diablo Immortal. However, it turned out to be much, much more than that because of a hidden mechanic the community originally wasn't aware of. The way Diablo Immortal's grind works is to get your character maxed out, you need 6 5 out of 5 star gems, which each cost on average 16,000 per gem, which, keep in mind, you are gambling to get these gems. So this number is theoretical. You can go even higher than this, or you could end up getting lucky and going lower, but most likely you could end up going higher than this. The mechanic that the community hadn't taken into account, Awakening a Gem, which basically adds an additional 5 slots for 5 out of 5 star gems to that gem, which means it takes 36 5 out of 5 star gems to max a character, which is where the $300,000 to $600,000 number came from, which is basically the cost of a house, a freaking house, for some pixels on a screen. And that's not even a guaranteed amount. You can end up spending more than that since it's gambling, like I said earlier. So you aren't even guaranteed to max out your character at $600,000. If you don't see how this is predatory and a disgrace to the gaming industry, I don't know what is. And it has been making the rounds all over the internet. Everyone's talking about it. And it's another just PR disaster for Activision Blizzard that's really going to hit them where it hurts.
It was in this context that fans and prominent members of the Souls community questioned the involvement of Activision in the creation of Sekiro. The upcoming clip by EpicNameBro will provide insight into the partnership between FromSoftware and Activision. While it's a bit lengthy, it will offer a broader context not only on the development and design of video games, but also on the business and strategic aspects of running a gaming company.
The elephant in the room for me is Activision and Microsoft's involvement in this, and I've even had people tweeting at me being like, I hate this, I'm not going to buy this game because Activision's ruined other companies and they're going to ruin FromSoft. First of all, FromSoft's still owned by Kadokawa. Like, it's not like Activision has bought FromSoft, to my knowledge, and I think we would know. I think we would hear about that. So maybe don't worry too much about that. But I really want to look at this from FromSoft's perspective. You think Demon's Souls was published by Sony, except they didn't want to publish it overseas, and so that's where Atlas gets involved, and it's kind of a mess. Then FromSoft goes with Bandai for Dark Souls, and it's a huge multi-platform success, but it's not on PC. There is the petition from Total Biscuit. Total Biscuit, you remember that guy because that Dark Souls one would not have been on PC without Total Biscuit. There's that petition. There's the PC release of Dark Souls, and I've speculated in the past, and I stand by this belief. I believe that at the time that they negotiated to do a PC port of Dark Souls 1, they negotiated for a couple of sequels as well. I think that's where Dark Souls 2 and 3 came from. I don't know that. This isn't insider knowledge. This isn't. This is a strong hunch of mine. It's just from me looking at the situation. That's what I believe. It's my speculation. So they did that with Bandai, but it's kind of had them trapped and stuck in this same. They have to use this world and they have to connect things together, and they can't really innovate a whole lot. So they went back and they did something else with Sony. They did Bloodborne. It's different. It's not gameplay-wise, I would argue that it's really not as different as people think it is. But in terms of presentation and story, it's different from the Souls games, and it's a different setting as well, for sure. So at that point, you know, you've worked with Sony, you got locked in with this with Bandai, you've done this thing, you're looking for other options, you go back with Sony again, you do something new. Let's look at what they get out of a partnership with Activision. First of all, they probably get a bigger budget because of all of the successes that they've had in the past. And Activision's got a lot of money. And if Activision's like, you know what, we'll do this, we'll publish this. I'm looking at the trailer and it looks like there are going to be some graphical improvements. It looks like it's going to be better, and particularly with regards to the animation with the grappling hook, this would be my one big concern is how well animated the character is going to be for grappling, especially if there's lots of leaps and verticality. We'll see how it actually goes, but I think that they get that out of it. I think that probably they get the freedom to make a new IP, because if they do something else for Sony, it's probably going to be the likes of a Bloodborne 2. Or if they did something with Bandai would probably want Dark Souls 4 because they have that IP and they want to add value there. So if they want to do something new, then I think they kind of need a new publisher. It helps them cultivate fans on multiple different platforms. This is not, if they don't want to work with Bandai, they don't want to do more Dark Souls stuff, maybe Sony, but if Sony wants Bloodborne 2, maybe not. But if Sony's like, well, we'll let you make something else too, but still it would only be on PlayStation. So if they want it to be on PC as well, and they want it to be available to people who have Xboxes, this is something that Activision is definitely going to be wanting to do. I think another major thing that it does is it lets them show their old partners. It lets them show Sony, hey, we don't need you to make games, okay? We can make games with other people. People will give us money to make video games. All right? All right. So I think that increases their ability to negotiate with the likes of Sony or Bandai or whoever in the future to show we can work with Bandai, we can work with Sony, we can work with Activision, we can work with whoever the heck we want, and we can make whatever the heck we want. I think it kind of empowers FromSoft from that perspective. But the main thing is I feel like it really gets them the cash to make what they really want to make, and it gives them freedom from their old IPs. I would also say that I think there's a little bit of an East-West divide here, and I don't know. I honestly think that FromSoft has no idea how much a lot of people hate Activision. I really don't think that they truly understand that their company takes a pretty substantial goodwill hit from consumers in the West because they are having a game published by Activision. And not everybody's like that. You know, there are a lot of people, including myself, who are like, fucking Activision, really? So I don't know. As far as Activision ruining FromSoft, I don't think it's going to happen. Could Activision really commercialize the fuck out of this game and really gouge consumers on DLC and shit like that? Yeah, they could do that. They could ruin this game. They could. I don't know. I would like to hope that they wouldn't. But in general, I wouldn't read too much into this.
Now that we've gained a comprehensive context on the mood of the Souls community regarding the partnership with Activision, let's delve into the details from Miyazaki and his team's perspective on the origins and nature of the partnership. First, let's explore the origins of the partnership from FromSoftware's viewpoint, and later, we'll revisit it from Activision's perspective. When FromSoftware initially started working on the game that would become Sekiro, the leadership group didn't have a specific publisher in mind. The studio engaged in discussions with various companies about the project. Yasuhiro Kitao explained, "Initially, when we had this project proposal, we took it to a number of companies. We don't have the clout to publish outside of Asia and Japan, so Activision was one of the companies we approached, and one of the companies that expressed interest in discussing it. Activision showed the most keen interest in the project proposal. They loved the idea right from the start, respected our vision, and provided user testing and feedback that we simply couldn't handle, making their involvement highly beneficial. Regarding the nature of the game, it was initially planned as an installment in the Tenchu franchise, a property to which FromSoftware did own the rights. Interestingly, Activision had originally purchased the rights to this game from Sony, but later sold the rights to FromSoftware in 2004. Kitao shared, "When we initially set out to create something different from Dark Souls and our previous titles, we thought it would be interesting to make a Japanese-themed game. So, we started moving in the direction of the shinobi and ninja, and of course, Tenchu was an IP with that history. That was the original impetus for this project. But as we developed and partnered with Activision, and began building it together, it started becoming its own thing. The game we wanted to make was no longer just Tenchu, it really evolved into its own entity." Now, let's examine the origin story from Activision's perspective. Michel Fonseca, Senior Product and Marketing Director at Activision, shared a similar account to what Kitao conveyed, stating, "At that time, what Sekiro would actually be was still up in the air. It certainly wasn't Sekiro when we first started talking with FromSoftware. Miyazaki was really interested in creating something in Japan, specifically in the Sengoku period. He was fascinated by that time. So they thought Tenchu would fit with his interest. It became clear to both sides that this was something unique and special, and something that should be an experience on its own. If you attach it to an IP that is known and beloved by fans, you become constrained. FromSoftware then began shaping what would become the world of Sekiro. As Activision and FromSoftware continued to collaborate, both companies perceived the partnership as mutually beneficial. Michel Fonseca remarked, "Sekiro adds something very different and special to our lineup of games. We're providing them with various resources, whether it's financial or the infrastructure we have. We know how to bring big games to market. We understand the process of publishing and marketing these games in the Western market. Using these resources helps us ensure the game reaches as many hands as possible, and that's our primary goal in this partnership." In addition to publishing responsibilities, Kitao mentioned that Activision also assisted them in areas outside their core strengths, stating, "They offered to help us in areas that we don't consider our expertise, such as user testing and providing feedback on usability. We're gaining a lot of stimulation from the ideas they give us." Activision is mindful of FromSoftware's devoted and passionate fan base and understands the need to proceed with caution. Fonseca stated, "FromSoftware has always had this sense of mystery in their games, so there's a fine balance between guiding people through the experience and allowing them to discover it. We've been very thoughtful about what to show and how to maintain that right pace for the fans. We don't want to reveal too much in the marketing either. There's a lot that we want to reserve for people to discover on their own." Finally, let's explore Miyazaki's perspective on the nature of the partnership. In an interview, the host asked, "It's been widely reported that FromSoftware is working with Activision on this title. What kind of collaboration exists?" Miyazaki explained, "Excluding actual game development and sales within Japan and Asia, we've entrusted sales in the rest of the world to Activision. One of the most significant reasons for choosing Activision as a publisher was that they could provide advice throughout the entire length of game development. But let me be clear, all decisions about game development are made by us. Activision respects the game that we are making, and that we desire to make, and offers play impressions as well as advice about how we could improve the game. As always, we request that all decisions after the title screen be left to us, and we've successfully collaborated under this framework." Judging by the outcome of the collaboration between the two companies, even years after the game's release, it's safe to say that they both succeeded in adhering to this collaborative framework. Throughout our making of videos, we have consistently delved into the aspects of game development and game design of the Souls games. However, we have rarely touched on topics related to game production, especially from the producer's perspective, specifically that of Sony and Bandai Namco. Fortunately, during the making of Sekiro, Activision's game producer for Sekiro, Robert Conke, shed light on this topic, and we will share these insights in this section. To understand game production, the first thing we need to grasp is the role of a game producer. In an interview, the host addressed this exact topic, asking, "What role does a producer play in the creation of a game such as Sekiro?" Robert Conke explained, "My job is to ensure that production on the game is on schedule, at quality, and on budget. Responsibilities include obstacle and risk communication and mitigation, communicating with the developer, hiring third-party vendors and managing them and their costs, getting voiceover recorded, working with outsourcing groups, ensuring age ratings readiness, ensuring readiness for final submission to first parties, speaking as an expert on the game at press events, and much more. I'm also the internal center of contact for the plethora of departments involved in the making of a game of this scale, including legal, quality assurance, customer service, localization, marketing, PR, and others. Another part of my job is to know the game inside and out, to understand not only what's in the game, but also what a developer is planning to change to ensure we're making the best possible decisions as an organization, and that the message we're communicating is correct." Upon careful observation of what Robert Conke shared, a producer is essentially a project manager plus more. It is understandable why Miyazaki mentioned during our video on Dark Souls that he would never want to do game production again after handling dual roles as director and producer for Dark Souls. Nevertheless, a producer is crucial in game development, allowing the director to focus on the creative side of things, such as game design and direction. It is evident from Robert Conke's response that the qualities required for a game producer are very different from those of a game director. In the interview, the host followed up asking, what is a key quality you need for a job such as yours? Robert shared, "You've got to be a pretty good multitasker to keep up with so many things coming at you from so many directions. Keeping a cool head when everything is on fire is pretty important." The host continued, "What skills and qualities would an employer look for when hiring a producer?" Robert replied, "When I'm looking for an associate producer or production coordinator, I'd want someone who is passionate about what they do, organized, flexible, experienced, doesn't mind weird hours across multiple time zones, and has strong soft skills and game sense." If you are interested in becoming a game producer rather than a game designer, Robert has you covered. In the interview, the host asked, "If someone wanted to have a job like yours, how would they go about getting one?" Robert shared, "There are many different ways to get into the industry. A common starting point is joining a testing team. Others take internships or come into the industry partway after working in another one with cross-application, such as finance. Production is very specific and tends to be hard to get into, as there are usually not a large number of producers on a game, ranging from 1 to 6 for the biggest games out there. I personally had a relatively rare way of breaking into the industry, where I was lucky enough to get a job at a Japanese developer for several years after studying the language in college, and then applied for a job with Activision after we'd worked with them directly. If you observed the earlier interview with Jeff, Yasuhiro Kitao, and Robert, you would notice that he also worked as a translator for Yasuhiro. In the interview, the host asked how this skill has helped him with his job, saying, "How does your fluency in Japanese help the overall project?" Robert replied, "It helps communication for sure. We don't have to rely on translators for live conversation or emails as much, which could have slowed things down a lot, especially with the time zone difference. Being able to speak to a developer directly means meetings are easier to schedule, and info flows more quickly. The downside is that I'm not a native speaker, and my Japanese isn't perfect. Plus, if we only have a conversation in Japanese, then all of the onus is on me to ensure that what was discussed is accurately conveyed to our other groups, such as QA and user testing." We have no doubt that Robert feels fortunate to be able to work with Miyazaki and FromSoftware. In the interview, he shared how he felt when the host asked, "What has been the most satisfying part of your work on Sekiro?" Robert said, "Being a part of this game and working directly with FromSoftware has truly been an honor. It's not often you get to work with a developer of their caliber. One of the most satisfying parts was seeing the game move from a super early prototype into something that gradually was fleshed out into more and more of a full gameplay experience. The other really satisfying part was when we announced and saw how excited fans were. It really had a positive impact on everyone's motivation." Sekiro introduced a lot of changes to the Souls mechanics, including the skill tree, grappling hook, and prosthetic arm. In the interview, the host asked, "What are your favorite gameplay mechanics that appear in Sekiro?" Robert shared, "The combat is, in my very biased opinion, fantastic. Despite the relatively simple controls, it is incredibly deep and also unique. I've never played a game that felt this way, and I hope it's going to feel like a huge breath of fresh air for the fan base." Our last topic is interesting because we are once again discussing game development. Robert's experience is unique because he has observed how games are developed in the West and can provide a comparison with FromSoftware. During the interview, the host asked, "What impressions did Activision have regarding FromSoftware's development process?" Robert responded, "It's interesting. I'm not sure how much I can disclose, but it's just interesting." The host followed up, asking, "Can you provide an example of what you find interesting?" Robert explained, "Well, to begin with, the development styles in Japan and the United States are generally different. In my personal opinion, in the American development scene, specifications are crucial. It's essential to have the entire game's content detailed in the specifications from start to finish. On the other hand, in Japan, it's often the case that ideas are developed and expanded upon during the creation process." The host commented, "Japan is often said to be inefficient." Robert replied, "It might not be efficient, but I personally like it. In Japan, there's an atmosphere where even new ideas that emerge during production can be implemented because they're deemed interesting. Even when compared to the development scene in Japan, I think FromSoftware has a unique approach. It's about creativity. I'm truly impressed. Whether it's enemy design or the images they send us, everything is amazing. Especially in Sekiro, the fusion of Japanese beauty and the mysterious atmosphere characteristic of FromSoftware creates a unique and fresh world. On the first day of Gamescom 2018, Activision officially announced Sekiro's release date as March 22, 2019. Additionally, they unveiled the collector's edition of the game, which includes a 7-inch Shinobi Ninja statue, a collectible art book, and more. Eager fans had the opportunity to play Sekiro at Gamescom through the available demo booths. On the same day, Activision also released a 5-minute gameplay footage on their YouTube channel. This was particularly beneficial for those who were unable to participate in the event. In this section, we will introduce the key members of Miyazaki's team who worked on Sekiro, namely Yuka Kitamura, Kazuhiro Hamatani, Masaru Yamamura, Daisuke Satake, and others. We will delve into the 9 profiles of the Sekiro team, ranging from concept artists, game designers, and game programmers. We are going to show short clips of each team member so that we can gain more context and familiarity with the team members who support Miyazaki. Fortunately, during the creation of Sekiro, FromSoftware collaborated with the website Game Informer and created short documentaries on the creation of various aspects of the game, such as the music, concept art, and gameplay. Some of the clips related to Sekiro are from this collaboration. The rest of the clips are from interviews for older games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2, and Ninja Blade, as some of the Sekiro members were not included in the Game Informer documentaries. If you recall our Bloodborne video, we included a section about the beautiful soundtrack of the game and featured several composers. One of them was Yuka Kitamura, who created themes for characters like Lady Maria, Ebrietas, and others. Yuka Kitamura has also contributed to other FromSoftware games such as Armored Core 5, Dark Souls 2, Deracinei, and others. However, the game that most people associate with her is Dark Souls 3, where she composed the glorious opening theme. This majestic song greets players every time they load the game. Here's a short clip of her sharing some insights into the creation of the music for Sekiro.
In general, when starting these projects, the team and I get sort of core concepts from Miyazaki. This time, it wasn't just boss battle music, like our previous titles, but we had to think about the general open field background music, the enemy suspicion music, and also there's the larger element of the story this time. We had to think about individual theme songs for each character. So we built the backbone of a lot of the boss battle music off of those key character themes. My initial reaction was, seeing as this is a game set in Japan, well, it was very exciting, but it was also very challenging. Compared to our older titles, which use a lot of kind of regal fantasy or very grandiose orchestral or choral elements, this time it was obviously set in Japan, set in Sengoku. This is a very bloody period of conflict. And so we had to think about a lot more wildness to the nature of the tracks and the composition. So this provided, at the same time, a lot of new stimulus and a lot of new challenges. So obviously, there is no correct answer for this. It varies person to person. But what I personally like to do is to just start with a sound. You just need to kind of make a sound to kick everything off and to kick everything into gear. This time, the themes that we were given weren't just Japan. It was thinking about the Sengoku period, this period of war and conflict, thinking about the specific culture, which is sort of an esoteric Buddhist approach to the religious aspects of Japan. And so all of that needed a sort of backbone and a base, and for that I chose to use a wadaiko, which is sort of a large Japanese drum. So I just hit the drum and I used this as a baseline for all of my initial composition. So mostly our composition in the past has used the computer. I like to use DST instruments as my kind of main tool. But this time, being a Japanese title, we used a lot of live recording of Japanese instruments, including a Japanese flute called the shinobue. And also, obviously, instruments we've used in the past for Dark Souls and such, like violin, cello, vocals, things like that. Those also became elements of the composition.
Do you play those instruments yourself?
Yeah, I played the violin, cello, and used my own voice. The flute was played by another instrumentalist.
That must make the game feel so personal, whatever you play, because it's like, oh, I remember singing that, I remember playing that part.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange and fun for me, but also when I play it for my family, they say, oh, really, you made this part.
What's it like working with external partners on the soundtrack then? Is that much different from what you've done in the past?
It's really interesting working with external composers as well. For Bloodborne, we had this approach. For the Dark Souls series, we worked with Sakuroba-san. And for Sekiro as well, we have this collaborative composition. And it's really interesting, while we're making music for games, they have a unique take on it as well. And they provide new stimulus, and they provide a different level of warmth for the melody, or a different bass line, or different drum beat that can help us reflect our own ideas. So, of course, being a game set in Japan with these brand new themes, it was quite refreshing at first, but as I thought about it, it began to feel like it was quite restricting. You know, we have to make a more emotive score, or something that is just Japanese flavored, without too much of that Western influence from our previous titles. Eventually, though, as I began working, it kind of came into its own. I began to find a lot of new ways to express myself with this kind of Japanese styling. So eventually, it did become very refreshing and provided a lot of new stimulus.
If you remember from our Dark Souls 3 video, we extensively discussed Miyazaki's approach to co-directorship in the game. We shared how co-directors like Yui Tanimura and Isamu Okano supported Miyazaki while he was simultaneously working on Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. For Sekiro, Miyazaki employed a similar approach, appointing Kazuhiro Hamatani as the co-director. Here is a list of the projects Kazuhiro Hamatani has worked on up to 2022. He joined FromSoftware much earlier than Miyazaki, taking the same position of game planner as Miyazaki when he joined in 2005. Notably, Hamatani served as the lead game designer for Bloodborne and later became the lead event designer for Elden Ring. Since Hamatani was not featured in the Game Informer interview, the video clip I will show is from a much older FromSoftware game called Ninja Blade. You'll notice that this video has a 90s feel to it and is being dubbed by a woman.
The main character, as you can see, is a ninja. And he comes from a family of ninja who have the power and ability to fight against monsters generation after generation. And the main character is a ninja, and the setting here is Tokyo, and the town of Tokyo is contaminated by parasites, and the infected human beings and animals turn into monsters. And the purpose of the main character is to eliminate such monsters from Tokyo.
Recently, Masaru Yamamura has gained attention for becoming the game director of the newly released FromSoftware game, Armored Core 6. It represents the first major game from FromSoftware not entirely directed by Miyazaki, since he assumed the role of company president. This shift reflects the trust and responsibility placed upon Yamamura. However, before stepping into the role of game director, Yamamura also contributed to most of Miyazaki's games. Here is a list of the projects Yamamura has worked on up to 2022. You will notice that he played a role in all of Miyazaki's major games, starting as a game planner in 2010. He gradually progressed from a game planner to lead game designer and later took on the role of game director. Here is a short clip of Masaru Yamamura sharing some insights into the creation of the tutorial for Sekiro.
Can we talk about tutorials? Will this game have more tutorials than previous games, and how do you feel about that?
We're actually being very friendly with our tutorials this time, probably more so than you're used to with our previous titles. Yeah, this is something we're also putting a lot of attention into.
Do you want to do that? Is that coming from the team, or do you think Activision would like more tutorials in the game?
You know, I feel good about it. Initially, it was a piece of advice from Activision to, go friendlier on the tutorial side. But as we began creating the game, we realized the tutorial is not necessarily for teaching the game and the mechanics, but for conveying the appeal of the game. And particularly to players who are used to our previous titles. These people would play it and, not really get it, and, not really understand that appeal, and try and play it from a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne perspective. And so in the end, it was really us going to Activision and saying, don't we need to teach this a little bit more here, and don't we need to be a little bit more friendly here? So yeah, it's been a really good two-way process. So we understand that we have players who have made a bit of a thing about From games, like not teaching the player anything and not guiding them at all and letting them get lost in the world and learn all the systems for themselves. And we don't want to disappoint those users as well. We feel like we've come to a nice middle ground and found a nice compromise where we can teach the appeal of the game and teach them new mechanics without being too overbearing and without disappointing those fans.
So what will the tutorials look like in the game? Is it at the very start of the game of just walking you through the process, or what is that middle ground?
One thing we're being wary of, even right from the start with this onboarding, is not to make it feel like we're just teaching the player everything or just like schooling them. We want to give them each element, introduce each element one by one and each action one by one, and then allow them to try that out and to challenge themselves. We don't want to give them all the answers from the get-go.
But will there be prompts on the screen of press the square button when the enemy does this, or what will it look like?
It's not really a sequential process where we just teach one thing after the other. It's more like a systemic introduction. Like we say, there is a concept of posture in the world of Sekiro. Now try attacking and see what it does, or try deflecting and see what it does. So we like to try and give the user the tools and then let them see how these tools work within these systems.
We are now turning our attention to the technical members of the team responsible for the actual programming of the game. Ultimately, video games are software, no different from the mobile and desktop applications we install on our computers. The lead programmer for Sekiro is Yoshitaka Suzuki. Here is a list of the projects Suzuki has worked on up to 2022. You will notice that he has been in the game industry for a long time, creating video games professionally, even while Miyazaki was still studying in university. As Suzuki was not featured in the Game Informer documentary, the short clip we will show involving him was taken from a Dark Souls 2 documentary, where he shared some insights into the development of the game. I think the basis is to provide a fun play environment for the players, and Dark Souls was a little rough in certain areas. My task was to smooth out the rough edges for a more direct and comfortable gameplay experience. The biggest thing I kept in mind when developing was to make sure it was still Dark Souls, but to refine and enhance elements of the game. Similar to Yoshitaka Suzuki, Takasuke Ando is a game programmer who has been with FromSoftware for a longer duration than Miyazaki. He has made significant contributions to the development of the Armored Core games, as well as the Souls series. Here is a list of the projects Takasuke Ando has worked on up to 2022. If we exclude Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, you will observe that Ando has been actively involved in the development of subsequent Souls games, extending up to Elden Ring. Notably, Ando has been featured in most documentaries that delve into the making of various FromSoftware games. In the next clip, Ando provides his perspective on the creation of Sekiro's game world.
So yeah, actually, along with the artists, we feel like approaching this world is definitely fresh. It's a new color palette, there's a new kind of visual range. We have to think about how we best technically incorporate their vision. So for us, it gives us a fresh feel as well. And also this time with Sekiro, we're using HDR display configuration, so that allows us an even higher level of detail. So a few things we've been paying attention to with this project, Sekiro. Obviously we've used fog in our games before, but this time we want to give this presentation of the light coming through the fog and how that affects the color palette and the game environment. The player can interact with the water surface, they're able to swim. So we need to make sure the water reflections and ripples and waves are looking good, and also the kind of a more realistic sense of vegetation and representing Japanese vegetation, and again player and enemy interaction with it. Particularly, speaking of Japan, we have bamboo trees, a lot of which you can bump into and cut down with your sword. So yeah, we're trying to add a higher sense of realism when we're approaching these aspects of the environment. Yeah, actually, in making these maps, even from an engineer standpoint, there's a lot more vibrancy, there's a lot more color that we're used to in creating these titles, and there's obviously these elements of beauty we haven't really rendered in this way before. So when I see that and experience that in the game, it feels not only refreshing, but it's kind of soothing as well.
Jun Ito holds a special place in this group as one of the original members who contributed to 3 essential Souls games: Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne. In each of these games, he not only served as a game programmer, but also held the role of lead programmer. Here is a list of projects Jun Ito has been involved in up to 2022. As mentioned earlier, he served as the lead programmer for almost all Souls games, including the VR game Derasene. Interestingly, for both Sekiro and Elden Ring, he has transitioned to the R&D section. Since he was not featured in the Game Informer documentary, the short clip I will show involving him was taken from a Bloodborne documentary, where he shares insights into the development of the game. I don't think the basic process for creating a game has changed much, but the memory storage and the number of CPU cores had much bigger increases during the transition from PS3 to PS4 versus the transition from PS2 to PS3. The PS4 is a wonderful device that is very easy to create with. We are now transitioning to the artists group of the Sekiro team. As you may recall, FromSoftware released special art books titled Design Works for each of their games, featuring interviews with Miyazaki and a group of concept artists. The three members we will delve into belong to this category. Tetsu Takahashi contributed to Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and Sekiro. While he may not have extensive experience with the older Souls games, he was included in the Game Informer documentary. Here is a brief clip of him sharing insights into the creation of the world of Sekiro.
So around the time that I was finishing up work on Bloodborne's DLC, the prototyping for Sekiro was beginning to take place. We weren't even sure of the gameplay or what shape it was going to take at that point. But everyone was asked to provide their ideas for a game world and just provide these images to serve as a base. And I drew this image, and looking back at it now, it was just one image, but I feel that it encapsulated that world. That speaks a lot to my memories of what Sekiro is. Previously, I worked on Bloodborne and the Bloodborne DLC. When designing those worlds, it was very much a case of digging deeper and deeper and going darker and darker. But with this game, something that I wanted to achieve was using both light and dark, kind of simultaneously. The emotions that come with light and dark. One thing that I was particularly impressed by in making the world of Sekiro, we had to research a lot of Japanese architecture from the time. I was blown away by how amazing this architecture was and the integrity of these structures. We actually had these real blueprints that were used at the time. We researched these, and when you look at them, I was just staggered and moved by just how intricate they were and how brilliant they were. Even as a Japanese native who was born and bred here, I saw again something that I'd never even considered as part of the design process. So of course, as with previous titles, we have design orders or concepts and themes from Miyazaki that we use to develop our ideas. It was the same with this game, but we had to fit those ideas within the existing framework in some way. So how they might fit into that medieval blueprint of Japan, that was, at the same time, extremely challenging, but a lot of fun.
Ryo Fujimaki worked on all of the major games directed by Miyazaki from Dark Souls onwards. You will observe from his list of projects that he was already at the director level by the time Elden Ring was created. As he was not included in the Game Informer documentary, the short clip we will show involving him was taken from the Bloodborne video, where he shared some insight into the creation of the game. Bloodborne was produced with the idea that the world, the characters, and the player will become a single entity, allowing the player to create a world of their own to enjoy. Under this theme, the player progresses through a variety of different situations, some beautiful and extravagant, while others are dark and depressing. The game is set in a massive and cursed city called Yharnam, which is inspired by 19th century Gothic horror traditions. Last but not the least, we have Daisuke Satake. I intentionally saved him for the end for a particular reason. Satake holds a unique position in the Sekiro team as the sole member who has worked on all of the Miyazaki-directed Souls games, spanning from Demon's Souls to Elden Ring. Remarkably, he has also contributed to projects like Dark Souls 2 and the VR game De Racine. As one of the longest-serving members at FromSoftware, he brings a wealth of experience to the Sekiro team. Here is a list of the projects Satake has been involved in up to 2022. For those who appreciate the Design Works books, you'll consistently find him in the interviews alongside Miyazaki. Given that he wasn't featured in the Game Informer documentary, the short clip we will show involving him was taken from a Dark Souls 2 documentary, where he shares insights into the development of the game. The most important aspect of Dark Souls 2 is exploration. We want players to explore the relationship between the characters and the map. What's important is what the characters are doing, what their background story is, and what has led them to be at that specific place at that specific time. When the characters of Dark Souls are in a place where something significant has occurred, the player needs to understand why the character is there. The storylines of the characters and locations contribute to the emotional reactions and personal characteristics of both the protagonists and antagonists. I tried to develop these storylines as much as possible to make it interesting as possible for the player. Before delving into other game development topics, let's start with the Souls Lore Bible, as it's both enlightening and amusing. In our previous video, we covered the Souls Lore Bible and its significance. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to watch, as it confirms the existence of the Holy Grail of Souls lore. During an interview, the host posed a question related to the Souls Lore Bible, asking, I'm professionally curious about the specific tools you use with your team. When you have to pitch your game idea to them, how do you do it? Is there a common Bible for all departments? Or does each department receive an adapted and incomplete document? Miyazaki revealed, usually, each department receives a different document. I never tell them everything that's going on in my head, especially during the development phase. I adapt the documents for the art department, for those working on combat, and for the other teams. I try to make them the best in the sense of how I tailor them to each discipline. That being said, even though the document is there, they simply use it as a base. If they followed it word for word, it would stifle their imagination. The same thing happens with developers. Their imagination grows as they develop the game, just as the player's imagination grows when playing it. That's the key. The thing is, obviously, they can't help but share the documents between departments. And you'll find contradictions because there are inconsistencies between the different documents. But this aspect might be necessary for the creative process. So, in the end, our team believes that everything is following a common and coherent goal. Contradictions may surface during development, but in the end, everything falls into place. They believe in me. Previously, we delved into the origins of the partnership between FromSoftware and Activision. We briefly mentioned that Sekiro was initially conceived as a new Tenchu game. In an interview, Miyazaki provided further insights into the decision to take a different direction. Miyazaki explained, "You might notice, but the early stages of this project were heavily influenced by the Tenchu series. While we initially considered releasing it as a new Tenchu game, we abandoned that idea swiftly. Fundamentally, Tenchu was crafted by a completely different group of developers with distinct idiosyncrasies that were evident in their work. We were concerned that developing under that name might lead to our work being perceived as mere imitation. Therefore, although we drew many influences from Tenchu, including the grappling hook and ninja kill, we established our own foundation for this game." Miyazaki revealed that when deciding on the main character for their Japanese-themed game, they initially had to choose between a samurai and a ninja. Ultimately, they opted for the ninja to accommodate the innovative game mechanics Miyazaki wanted to introduce. However, this decision didn't prevent him from incorporating samurai characters and NPCs into the game. The choice of a ninja as the main hero was crucial to realizing Miyazaki's vision for groundbreaking combat and movement innovations. Miyazaki explained, "When you talk about a Japanese-inspired setting, you generally have two main directions, samurai or ninja. We chose the ninja because samurai tends to be more grounded and fixed, primarily engaging in ground-based combat. In contrast, ninjas, at least from a Japanese perspective, embody versatility and freedom in design. Ninjas are a fantasy. I aim to navigate the rich, multi-layered environments the studio creates in a dynamic and free-form manner. A ninja symbolizes an archetype capable of using anything at their disposal. They don't adhere to a fixed fighting style but employ every means and exploit every weakness. This multifaceted hero was a concept the entire team was eager to explore." Now that Miyazaki had settled on the settings and the type of hero, the next decision was to determine the historical period in which the story would unfold. In making this choice, he deliberated between the Sengoku period and the Edo period. Miyazaki clarified, "When it comes to setting and world design, the primary periods associated with ninjas in Japan are the Edo and the Sengoku periods. We opted for the Sengoku period over the Edo period for two main reasons. Firstly, the Sengoku period was characterized by constant warfare and violence, being an era of warring states in Japan. This backdrop of bloody battles and conflicts resonated well with the ninja aesthetic and the kind of game we envisioned. The second reason for selecting the Sengoku period was that the Edo period is generally regarded as Japan's early modern period, while the Sengoku period is more medieval. By choosing the medieval Sengoku period, we could draw inspiration from ancient Japanese mysticism, capturing a timeline of beauty, and incorporate these elements into the world design." If you recall at the start of our video, Miyazaki decided to start working on a new IP once they wrapped up development for the Bloodborne DLC. In an interview, the host asked, "For the last decade, you've been known primarily for the Soulsborne games, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne. Why did you choose now as the right time to introduce a new action IP?" Miyazaki explained, "I believe it's important for us to have a diverse and free approach to making games in the way that we like. The Soulsborne games came about through this way of thinking, and it felt like a good time for a fresh IP once those projects wrapped up. It is evident that the new game, Sekiro, is breaking away from many conventions established by earlier Souls games, such as the Western medieval setting, online multiplayer, character and class selection, among others. Miyazaki acknowledged that he initially felt a bit hesitant about unveiling a game that wasn't a Dark Souls or Bloodborne sequel. He explained, "Simultaneously, we were eager to showcase what we could achieve with Sekiro. We believed people would appreciate the freedom from the constraints of our previous games. And, we're witnessing that enthusiasm at these shows. People are having fun and providing us with valuable feedback. That's a relief. We're not deliberately trying to position Sekiro as an antithesis to the Souls games, or completely alter the company's direction in game development, or catch people off guard. We love the Souls games. I enjoyed creating those games. Sekiro is meant to be something fresh and different, incorporating elements familiar to players of the old games. I want to preserve that because I enjoy those aspects of the old games, but introducing new components and mechanics is a way to keep it innovative. Providing something new is what will result in a better game." As early as our video on Demon's Souls, we highlighted Miyazaki's inclination for developing multiple games simultaneously. During an interview, the host inquired about his experience with parallel development, asking, "With Derasine and Sekiro, you directed two very different games simultaneously. What was that experience like? Did the two games inform or influence one another in any ways?" Miyazaki explained, "Directing multiple projects simultaneously is quite common for me, but it's true that these two titles had the most drastic change in disposition compared to those I've been involved with so far. While simultaneous direction does keep you very busy, the reason I'm willing to take it on is for the abundance of unique inspiration it can provide. I believe this was especially true with these two titles. It was a highly motivating experience to have this whirlpool of thought in the same headspace for two completely different games. It's challenging for me to precisely quantify the tangible influence they had on each other, but I like to think there was some resonance between the two. Perhaps the tranquility of Derasine heightened the violence in Sekiro, while the intensity of Sekiro made Derasine all the more serene." The host followed up with, "Given how different these games can be, do you think there is a through line or a connecting feeling or philosophy that ties together the works of FromSoftware?" Miyazaki replied, "That's a difficult question. I think one of the studio's characteristics is to wholeheartedly embrace what we find interesting, what we perceive as worthwhile, cool, or beautiful, and to place these ideals at the foundation of the games we create. Some of these aspects we find interesting may deviate slightly from what is considered to have mass appeal. This unorthodox nature could very well be what ties our games and our culture together." When asked about the challenges he faces during parallel development, Miyazaki shared, "Actually, I'm very used to directing multiple titles at once. Armored Core 4 and Demon's Souls were developed simultaneously, as were Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. This is a pretty normal situation for me, but what wasn't normal was announcing two games at the same time. I actually prefer parallel direction, directing multiple projects at once. As a creative, if you're focused on a singular thing all the time, it's easy to get stuck in that mentality. It's easier to find inspiration when you're working on multiple things than when you're totally focused on one. I enjoy that." It's not uncommon for games to go through lengthy years of development, as seen in the case of Diablo III and Diablo IV, or in some instances where games don't even get released. When asked about his ideal length of game development, Miyazaki shared, "We have probably spent 3 years per title, at least for our very recent games. It used to be a much quicker cycle. That was tough. For me personally, I feel 3 years is enough to keep the idea fresh. You can get the game out there while it is still fresh in your mind. Also, if we don't have that deadline, it's something that's hard for me to stop. So whether it's a 3-year or 5-year cycle, I need that deadline and a point to cut off and release the game. 3 years feels like that sweet spot." Derasine is a virtual reality game developed in parallel with Sekiro and directed by Miyazaki himself. Though we didn't create a separate making of video for it, we shared insights into its development because it highlights the unbounded creativity and risk-taking attributes of Miyazaki. In an interview, the host asked about Derasine, saying, "I didn't sleep at all yesterday to complete Derasine, which I absolutely fell in love with, perhaps more than any work you've created so far. What can you tell me about it?" Miyazaki shared, "For FromSoftware, Derasine is an experiment, or more precisely, a challenge. First, because it marks our debut in virtual reality. Second, because there's no combat, and the adventure is centered around the narrative nature of the game. It's much smaller in scale. Why did we take this risk? There are several reasons. One is that at FromSoftware, we want to have a variety of games and adventures. This changes the direction of our works, the direction we should follow. Games should be diverse, both in their combat and the skills they explore. Derasine is, in terms of its genre, a graphic adventure. This opens up a new and surprising horizon for FromSoftware. We want to convey that our company doesn't focus on just one thing, but we have a wide range of capabilities. That means we don't only make combat games, even though combat is dear to us and essential. Even without combat in Derasine, we haven't gotten bored. It allowed me to look the myth in the eye directly. The Souls games are renowned for incorporating references to various media, with fans often anticipating the appearance of familiar elements like patches and the Moonlight Greatsword in each new installment. When asked about continuing this tradition in Sekiro, Miyazaki clarified, "First and foremost, we want to emphasize that, while we have a reputation for including the Moonlight Greatsword and similar elements in our games, we don't want this to become too restrictive. As we embark on creating this new IP and world, we aim to avoid the feeling of repeating ourselves or forcing these elements into the game just for the sake of it or to fit them into the lore. This approach can impose limitations on our creativity, so I want to make it clear that the Moonlight Greatsword, for example, will not be featured in Sekiro. As for creating odes or references to our other games within Sekiro, we're actually being a little bit careful, because working with other publishers means you have to be careful with how you treat this material and this content. So, if it's Dark Souls to Dark Souls 3, it's easy to put in odes and references here or there, since it's the same publisher. For instance, with Derasine, that was released recently for VR, we had an ode to Bloodborne in there. Both titles are published by Sony. Actually, that reference, that nod itself, caused a much greater stir than we expected. Way more than we expected. When we were given that idea, like, why don't you just put a little nod in there? It'd be great. And we tried it, and it blew up. So, we just want to tread a little bit more carefully around that front. The host followed up. Are people reading too much into that little nod in Derasine? Miyazaki admitted, you know, it wasn't so much that they read too much into it, it was just supposed to be a little homage, but people kind of expected Bloodborne 2, and it kind of got a little bit crazy. So, we feel like we caused a great inconvenience to Sony, and that was really not our intention. Our making of video wouldn't be complete without exploring Miyazaki's favorite boss in the game. For Sekiro, the host asked, who is your favorite boss in the game? You don't have to go into detail, just sort of the broad strokes. Miyazaki revealed, that's a tough question. Actually, one of them that I really like, which you saw in the TGS trailer, is just a glimpse at the end. The giant ape. I hope you look forward to that one. Another, and you don't often see it in boss fights, employs really dirty tricks, real devious and underhanded techniques. Hopefully, you'll recognize that one when you encounter it. As a final topic on game development, the host asked Miyazaki about his experience working with different publishers, including Bandai Namco, Sony, and Activision. Miyazaki shared, working with each of them is very different, and each has its peculiarities. Product management and development priorities are different among them, as each has its own specialty. In the case of Activision, the company played a very important role in support and guidance, especially in areas where we at FromSoftware are not strong, such as localization, user experience, and marketing. Having them by our side helped us in development. For every new game Miyazaki creates, he always identifies and sets the main themes that will guide him in game direction. We witnessed this approach in our videos on the making of Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne. For Sekiro, Miyazaki identified 3 main themes, and in this section, we will cover each of them. In an interview, Miyazaki shared, there are 3 major concepts to the design in this game: dynamic exploration, violent sword fighting, and strategic gameplay. The idea of role-playing a ninja seemed the coolest way to realize these concepts while still retaining a sense of reality, which made that character archetype extremely attractive. In other words, the impetus for Sekiro's design initially came from the role of a ninja. The Souls games are renowned for their vertical map design, and among them, Sekiro makes the most of it by introducing the grappling hook, resulting in a dynamic exploration never seen before. Miyazaki elaborated, saying, "The grappling hook adds a new dimension to the action. The ability to traverse a three-dimensional map vertically, a unique feature of this game, allows players to fully immerse themselves in the environment and move with greater freedom. Moreover, the grappling hook facilitates positioning during combat, expanding the range of available combat options." If you ask anyone who has played Sekiro and enjoyed it, the number one reason they will share about what they love is the combat. This is achieved through the intense clash of swords and weapons in the game, resulting in the famous and delightful clang sound that is very familiar to Sekiro players. Regarding the combat, Miyazaki explained, "This work has a unique perspective on swordplay, based on the Japanese style of swords fiercely clashing together in a blend of offense and defense, as fighters seek to wear down and debilitate their opponent's posture. We have a finishing blow, the ninja kill, based on this idea. The core of the battle structure involves seeking a moment of weakness in a battle on the edge of death, just like a ninja." Still on the topic of combat, Miyazaki emphasized that Sekiro is not merely a Japanese-themed version of Dark Souls. In an interview, the host inquired, "When you mention that Sekiro is combat-focused, it gives the impression of a Japanese-themed Dark Souls, but it's not quite like that, is it?" Miyazaki affirmed, "That's correct. The combat in Sekiro, particularly the swordplay, demands a different approach compared to Dark Souls. The swordplay in Sekiro is intense, with swords clashing fiercely, and within that intensity, there's a strategic aspect of chipping away at the enemy's posture and finding openings. Moreover, in certain fights, there are set approaches that are highly effective, which is another distinctive feature of Sekiro. It places emphasis on employing various tactics, strategizing, and discovering effective approaches." Finally, the third major design theme of Sekiro is strategic gameplay. Among the three major concepts of Sekiro, strategic gameplay is the one Miyazaki emphasized the most. Whether it is in the usage of stealth, the prosthetic arm, or the grappling hook, he encourages players to make use of all available options to overcome the various challenges in the game. Miyazaki explained, "In this work, we've significantly expanded on fighting styles with an emphasis on allowing for creativity in approaching obstacles. We've provided numerous ways to solve these problems, with applications across various situations and enemies. You can either confront challenges directly or use the surroundings and your weapons to kill wisely, in a manner more akin to ninjas than to samurai. The grappling hook and swordplay also reinforce this style. Dynamic vertical movement with the grappling hook, or ninja-like swordplay based on exploiting a moment's weakness, or the vast range of ways to approach the game's challenges all contribute to that style." One common observation from players who have experience with older Souls games is that their familiarity with those titles doesn't necessarily translate into an advantage in Sekiro. Many find that they often die in the game and, in general, perceive it as more challenging than its predecessors. Miyazaki shared that Sekiro, unlike the other games, demands more strategy from players to overcome its difficulties. He explained, "Sekiro requires a unique approach to combat and tactics that differs from previous titles, posing a challenge for both existing fans and new players alike. Elements such as stealth and dynamic positioning can be used to find a good attack point, and prosthetic tools can be employed to overcome challenging situations effectively. Players have the opportunity to employ a great deal of cunning, and because of this, I feel Sekiro is less rooted in pure action and more in strategy than previous FromSoftware titles." In an interview, the host commented on this, saying, "It sounds like kill wisely will be a critical point for this work." Miyazaki agreed, "Yes, it's actually one of the core themes of this work, a means to allow many players to experience the thrill of overcoming difficult challenges. To put it plainly, if you're not that good at action, there will be other ways to play the game. Of course, you can always confront problems head-on. The swordplay is strenuous, without any tricks, and may end up being more challenging than what we've worked on up until now. In fact, the opportunities for ingenuity may end up being more interesting than straightforward combat." The host remarked, "So the player can enjoy a variety of approaches." Miyazaki elaborated, "It's reflected in our level design as well. Instead of solely getting caught up in combat as you progress through the level, you'll have the opportunity to observe enemies from high above, with a naturally flowing space allowing you to adjust your battle plans. The flow of battle is different, and you might even say it reflects the diversity of approaches. The host then inquired, "Do you think it'll be more enjoyable to think of battle strategies?" Miyazaki concurred, "Yes, it's tied to the fun of exploration. You'll be able to eavesdrop on enemies' conversations before battle and freely use that information to devise new strategies. We believe it'll be enjoyable." In this section, we'll explore the various sources that served as inspiration for Miyazaki in creating Sekiro. Undoubtedly, Tenchu stands out as the most significant inspiration behind the creation of Sekiro. We've extensively covered this aspect in the Origins of Sekiro and in our game development sections. Reflecting on this inspiration, Miyazaki shared, "It's true that there was a lot of influence from Tenchu. We even pondered making Sekiro a part of the Tenchu series at first. Of course, after that we researched and referenced many other games as well, but I think the largest influence was from Tenchu. Given that Tenchu played such a pivotal role in the creation of Sekiro, it's crucial to gain some familiarity with the game. Considering that Tenchu belongs to older console generations like the PS1, PS2, Wii, and Xbox, many people haven't played it, and in some cases, may not even be aware of its existence. To provide context regarding the nature of the game, I'd like to share 2 video clips that I believe you'll find very interesting. The first video is a TV commercial for the original Tenchu game, titled Tenchu Stealth Assassins.
You are the wind that moves through the air unseen. You are the darkness that goes unnoticed in the night. You are the lightning that strikes unannounced. You are the ninja, Rikimaru. You are the ninja who kills by stealth. You are the ninja who cannot be stopped.
You're the ninja needs to sneak up on some of that dog poop in the backyard.
Tenchu stealth assassins live by honor, kill by stealth.
The second video focuses on the making of the original Tenchu. We're fortunate that such a video has survived from a time before YouTube existed. From this footage alone, you can already discern some mechanics that influenced and found their way into Sekiro.
We take you to Tokyo, Japan, to the offices of Acquire Corporation for an inside look at the development team behind the hit PlayStation game, Tenchu.
Tenchu is set in 16th century feudal Japan. The player assumes the role of a ninja warrior who must use stealth, strategy, and espionage to become the ultimate ninja assassin. The player can choose from 2 characters. Both have different attacking techniques and unique motions for special moves. Rikamura uses a ninja sword for up to 3 sequential attacks. Ayami uses short swords in both hands for up to 4 sequential attacks.
With a user-controllable camera, the player surveys the historic Japanese environment while remaining undetected.
The player can use the camera to search for the enemy around corners and from rooftops. Strategically, it's one of the keys to mastering the game and critical to executing the various stealth kills.
All the character movements and animations are modeled from authentic ninja techniques.
In order to create the realism of the character's movements, we hired Sho Kasugi, a well-known jiu-jitsu professional, his son Kane, and several other experts for a motion capture session. Then we integrated their movements into the game, about 300 in all.
Through stealth tactics and precision, the player is rewarded with up to 20 lethal weapons, devices, and spells.
Tenchu has a unique targeting system that allows the player to aim weapons from afar. The camera angle changes to the first-person perspective and displays a crosshair. This helps the player attack with more accuracy.
Following a successful release in Japan, the production team went to work to make enhancements for Tenchu's highly anticipated US release.
We created 2 entirely new missions and in-game cinematics for each character, new weapons, plus we made substantial improvements to the enemy artificial intelligence. With the enhancements to the AI, the enemies react with more realism. A palace guard is alerted by the sounds, like a throwing star or barking dog. They call for help when under attack. There is no other 3D game out there with a smarter AI.
Tension. Live by honor. Kill by stealth.
In our previous videos, we've already established that Miyazaki draws inspiration from manga and anime, given their immense popularity in Japan. He has also confirmed intentionally referencing these inspirations, as seen in the case of Berserk. Regarding the game Sekiro, Miyazaki confirmed drawing inspiration from two specific manga sources, which we'll cover in their respective sections. Let's begin with the manga titled Blade of the Immortal. Before we delve into discussing what the manga is about and its significance to Sekiro, let's first lay out the evidence so that it's no longer a topic of contention, allowing us all to proceed without any distractions. In an interview, the host asked, "Are there any other animes that you were inspired by for Sekiro?" Miyazaki revealed, "If I had to pick one, a small inspiration would have been Hiroaki Samura's Blade of the Immortal. That's another manga. Blade of the Immortal was actually a small source of inspiration for parts of Bloodborne as well. It's something I enjoy. The weapons are so cool in that." The term small inspiration is actually an understatement, considering the significance of the inspiration and its impact on the story of Sekiro. To fully understand the influence, we need a clear understanding of the manga Blade of the Immortal. But before we do that, let's quickly return to Miyazaki's childhood. In our video about him, we covered the different stages of his life and provided a comprehensive table mapping his young age and the available mangas corresponding to each age. You'll notice that Miyazaki was exposed to Berserk when he was 15 years old, in the year 1989. If we extend this table by one more year, you'll see an entry in 1993 for the release of the manga Blade of the Immortal. Miyazaki was 19 years old when this manga was released, just at the right age to experience this grim and violent seinen manga. If Miyazaki had been a little younger, Blade of the Immortal wouldn't have resonated with him. However, fate had willed it so that he was at the perfect age to understand and appreciate the mature topics covered by this seinen manga. For those who are not very familiar with the term, seinen manga refers to those that are more grim and adult-oriented compared to the heroic and adventure-based shonen manga, which are made for a younger audience. Now let's return to Sekiro. One of its prevalent themes is the concept of immortality. Throughout the game, players encounter various immortal characters, such as the true corrupted monk. This boss, possessing 3 vitality bars, wields the naginata and serves as the guardian of the Vermilion Bridge. Initially, her illusion protects the entrance to the wedding cave door, and she wears the attire of an old nun, concealing her face behind a mask while clutching a Buddhist prayer necklace in her left hand. As the battle progresses, a centipede emerges from her neck, revealing her infestation and triggering a new set of feral behaviors. Miyazaki revealed that Sekiro drew inspiration from the manga Blade of the Immortal when exploring the concept of immortality. In this manga, the protagonist Manji becomes infested with worms that grant him eternal life. The story follows Manji as he assists a young girl in seeking revenge for her murdered family. Manji's immortality was bestowed upon him by a nun named Yaobikuni, and driven by the death of his sister, he embarks on a quest to end his eternal existence. He vows to atone by slaying 1,000 evil men, sustained by sacred bloodworms that allow him to survive any injuries and reattach severed limbs even after hours of separation. There are other characters and creatures in Sekiro that manifest a similar worm infestation as Manji from Blade of the Immortal. This can be observed when fighting the Guardian Ape, releasing a similar centipede as the true corrupted monk during the second phase of the battle. Other characters, like the Senpu monks and even Hanbei the Undying, use the term infested and the words blessed by the worm, much like the case of Manji from the manga. Here is a trailer of the film adaptation of Blade of the Immortal, beautifully depicting the points I shared earlier with manga screenshots.
一刀流は父上を殺し
絶対にくたばらない男がこの江戸のどこかにいる。その男を探し出せ。
父上の敵討ちを手伝ってください。
楽しもうぜ姉ちゃん。悪いな、少し汚しちまった。
万次さん、大丈夫？
かすり傷だ。
One of the joys of watching anime and reading manga based on ninjas is discovering numerous fascinating characters possessing special powers, making the medium very compelling for many audiences. This appeal is exemplified by Naruto, belonging to the largest manga and anime franchises, whose story revolves around the world of ninjas. In Japan, one of the most well-known authors involving ninja characters is Futaro Yamada, specifically through his novel, The Kuga Ninja Scrolls. This seminal work, written in 1958, influenced many future manga and anime based on ninjas after its publication. The work itself has been adapted into a manga titled Basilisk, and influenced one of the best-known ninja films, Ninja Scroll. In our previous videos, we learned about Miyazaki's fondness for reading books for creative inspiration, which helped him design the stories and characters of his games. He acknowledged Futaro Yamada as one of the authors who influenced his game Sekiro. During an interview, the host inquired, "We thoroughly enjoyed the movement of Lady Butterfly we encountered yesterday. Would you like to discuss the initial design and the inspiration behind the texture and personality you conveyed to the designers for that character?" Miyazaki replied, "Yeah, actually, when designing this boss, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted. Initially, I suggested that this boss would use illusionary techniques and razor-thin wires to move around the map. I conveyed this clear idea to the designers. Additionally, I love these kinds of old Japanese ninja stories created by the likes of Futaro Yamada, who depicts a strong old Japanese ninja grandma. If you're familiar with Basilisk, Futaro Yamada is the original creator of the series. I envisioned a super strong ninja granny character and really wanted to include one in my game. And if that is not yet enough evidence of Miyazaki's preference for drawing inspiration from existing media, here is another interview where Miyazaki placed emphasis on Futaro Yamada. In the interview, the host asked, "I remember that when we talked about Bloodborne, we discussed a lot of weird literature. Algernon, Blackwood, Chambers, Dunsany, and above all, Lovecraft. Is there a similar literary figure influencing Sekiro?" Miyazaki shared, "Ninjas, as you know, are traditional Japanese icons and make for interesting characters. Of course, to capture this, I read many books, including Japanese mythology, especially Buddhist mythology and Buddhist sutras. So, my creativity draws from these sources. But it's not a case like Lovecraft, who was indeed the seminal origin of Bloodborne. The influence of research hasn't been as strong this time. However, there is a Japanese author who wrote some fantastic ninja novels that I've read intensely. Perhaps they have influenced me the most." Now that we have established the inspiration based on Futaro Yamada's work, let's gain more context on the story of the Kuga Ninja Scrolls, which in itself possibly leads to a very interesting video game. The story is set in 1614 Japan and follows two enemy ninja clans, the Kuga and the Iga. They've been rivals for 400 years. The retired shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu lifts their peace treaty to settle a government succession dispute. Danju and Ogen, leaders of the Kuga and Iga, select 9 members each for a deadly battle. They receive a scroll listing all 20 combatants, and the side with the most survivors returning with the scroll by the end of May at Sunpu Castle will win. Basically, it's a battle royale involving characters with superpower abilities. That premise alone is very engaging and would make for an excellent ninja game. Before we conclude this section on Sekiro's inspiration, let's watch this clip from the anime Basilisk, which shows the premise and nature of Futaro Yamada's work.
Don't you worry. Just relax. This'll only hurt for a second. It's stronger than katana. And sharper. Ogun, what is this? What is your ninja using?
Wielding his Kokujo technique, Yashimaru controls his opponent's fate. Coated in animal oil, the shiny black strands from young women will slice you in half.
In this section, we'll delve into additional game design principles and insights that we couldn't explore in the game development section. If there is one topic we always covered in the making of videos, it's Miyazaki's adherence to the principle of gameplay first. In an interview, the host asked, "I'd like to delve into your creative process. We know that books are an essential part of how you create video games, and that the process of multiple readings helps you create your worlds. But how do you choose or find these worlds? Are they the starting point of your creative process?" Miyazaki explained, "Well, let's talk about Derasenei, Bloodborne, or Sekiro. The starting point is the gameplay system, mechanics, and design. The first thing we consider is the type of game we're looking to create. Based on that design, we like to choose the universe that best fits it, the one that can contribute the most to its characters or narrative. In the case of Sekiro, we wanted to design a very specific type of action, and then we realized that the ninja character was a good fit for conveying the sensations we were seeking." The host followed up, "So, what is that initial spark? A feeling? An image? How do you usually find that first idea?" Miyazaki replied, "It varies a lot depending on the case. With Sekiro, it was about ideas I discovered while developing Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Initially, I thought about incorporating them into those games, but we realized that they didn't fit. The universe we wanted to create didn't align with either of them. So, if we wanted to explore these ideas, we had to do it outside of those franchises. I gathered all these concepts that didn't fit in either Dark Souls or Bloodborne, and they ended up being the starting point for Sekiro." We have explored in other videos how Miyazaki does not follow game trends, nor blindly copies the mechanics of other games without understanding the underlying principles behind them. In an interview, the host asked a question related to this, saying, "Dishonored series developer Arcane recently spoke out to praise FromSoftware for bucking industry trends with Demon's Souls and taking risks. Do you go into your work wanting to break rules? Is that the kind of feeling you want to carry forward in your career as well?" Miyazaki replied, "Personally speaking, I don't think I was wanting to break rules. A closer description would be that I wasn't trying to follow rules. I'm interested in rules, and there is a lot to learn from them, but that's merely an ingredient to help instigate game design. This approach I have isn't going to change over the course of my career. With the conclusion of the Dark Souls series, we could say FromSoftware is embarking on a new journey with Miyazaki. Though it's not as risky as compared to when they released Demon's Souls, there is still a chance that the next venture might not work, albeit a minuscule one. In an interview, the host addressed this topic, saying, "Do you worry that the games you make from this point may not have the same kind of impact the Souls series has had?" Miyazaki replied, "I would be lying if I said no. However, I'm keeping my mind away from worries. I don't think I'm good at using worries as a driving force to help develop games. I mean, the new titles I'm working on now make me feel excited instead of bringing me worries. Mind you, I'm basically an optimist." The Souls series is renowned for its rich lore and narrative themes, sparking a plethora of speculative content within the Souls community. In an interview, the host asked about this in the context of Sekiro, saying, "Let's delve into the mythology you've created for Sekiro. In Dark Souls, we had death, loneliness, time, and pain as the main themes. What are the central themes in Sekiro?" Miyazaki replied, "The Sengoku era, Japanese mythology, and ninjas, as I mentioned. What's primarily in the background are myths. By myths, I mean concepts like death or immortality. Specifically, immortality is what has guided me, or what I wanted to explore more deeply, or in a different way than in previous titles. Japanese myths cast a significant shadow behind Sekiro. That's because, in the era described in these myths, humans and gods had a very close relationship in Japan. This is the universal image from which Japanese culture emerges. What I mean is that this is the way the Japanese myth of immortality arises. The Souls games are known for having signature designs of monsters and bosses, something that could not be labeled as generic. In an interview, Miyazaki gave more insight about this. The host asked, "What were some of your personal highlights from the development of Dark Souls 3 and the series in general?" Miyazaki replied, "I have a lot, actually. Game designs, level designs, art designs, and even in regards to the text. However, if I were to single out one concept in particular, I would say it's my personal want of having things hold a sense of beauty within them. No matter how hideous something is, I want to see a spark of beauty within it, or I want to create something of beauty that shines when it is next to whatever that hideous something is." We have consistently covered the topic of Souls-likes in our past videos, starting from our video on Bloodborne. This is because Bloodborne signaled that Miyazaki's games had reached the mainstream audience. During the making of Sekiro, the topic of Souls-like games was again discussed, and we were fortunate to receive updated insights into Miyazaki's views on them. The host asked, "Shifting gears a bit, since Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, there has been a rise in Souls-like games. Do you personally play these types of games?" Miyazaki replied, "I personally don't feel comfortable with the term Souls-like, but I do play these kinds of games quite often. I find them enjoyable, and at the same time, they offer a source of inspiration because of the similarities in approach. So it's a mix of enjoyment and study." The host followed up, "Have you played Koei Tecmo's Nioh? I remember being surprised when Sekiro was announced, as it seemed like FromSoftware was also working on a Japanese-themed game." Miyazaki replied, "Yes, I have played it. When information about Nioh was coming out, we were already working on Sekiro, and I distinctly remember being quite surprised. This year's E3 also saw the announcement of Nioh 2 by Koei Tecmo and Sony's Ghost of Tsushima. I'm often asked, what do you think? It would make me really happy if, in the future, Sekiro, along with these other Japanese-themed games, is remembered as a time when Japanese-themed games were thriving." When Sekiro was revealed to the public, the Dark Souls remaster had already been released. However, the Demon's Souls remake was not yet known. The next question is interesting for us, as we don't have information on a possible Bloodborne remaster or remake yet. However, we can deduce Miyazaki's perspective on this topic from his reply. The host asked, "Any chance of a Demon's Souls remaster after we had the Dark Souls remaster?" Miyazaki replied, "I don't think the possibility is zero. But personally, it's not something that I'd be interested in doing. It's like when you write, when you're younger, you look back on it and think, oh goodness, what was I thinking? It's not that I'm embarrassed, I just don't like to look at my previous works. It's the same with Dark Souls, this wasn't my own idea. So, You'd have to ask Sony, but I don't think that the possibility is zero. You'd have to see what they're thinking about it. But details, I have nothing. We have covered the topic of boss variability in game design sections as early as our video on Demon's Souls. Miyazaki's stand about this has not changed through the years. In an interview, the host asked, "Is there a particular kind of boss that you've found doesn't work well for the new movement options, or is there something you wanted to do, but maybe didn't work as well?" Miyazaki replied, "Yeah, definitely. There are boss fights that, by design, didn't align with that approach. They don't accommodate the new movement options or stealth mechanics. If we allowed players to use the grappling hook everywhere, or perform stealth kills on every boss, it would become monotonous and boring. Therefore, we strive to tailor each boss fight to their specific characteristics and every character's unique traits, crafting encounters based on what will be most enjoyable and the experience we want the player to have in that particular moment. For instance, there might be boss fights where you're pitted against a massive creature, requiring you to navigate the entire arena swiftly, embracing dynamism. Conversely, there are encounters where direct confrontation is essential, utilizing every tool in your arsenal, such as the prosthetic tool and the katana, engaging in intense one-on-one duels. Thus, we aim to cater to the unique idiosyncrasies of each boss and situation. One of the primary distinctions in Sekiro compared to other games directed by Miyazaki is the inclusion of a fixed main character and a more tightly structured narrative. Initially, concerns lingered within the community regarding how these changes might impact the storytelling presentation or the unveiling of the game world. In an interview, the host asked, "Unlike in previous titles, you're going with a fixed character this time." Miyazaki explained, "Yes, this will be my first project with a fixed main character, but I think it's necessary to take a fresh turn. The themes of this story are difficult without a fixed character. I believe we'll enjoy this style, though. However, to avoid any misunderstandings, let me be clear. This is not a game in which the story takes priority. There are times when the story propels the characters, but otherwise, in most respects, storytelling is little different from our previous works. There's still going to be this kind of fragmented element to it. You're still going to have to explore it to find all the clues and depth for yourself. We feel like it's not going to change too much in that sense. Our approach to storytelling has not changed." The Souls games have a long history with the Tokyo Game Show, beginning with the disastrous Demon's Souls demo in 2008. Yet, after the triumph of Dark Souls, these games garnered immense anticipation at the event, attracting large crowds eager to experience the demos showcased at their booths. This trend persisted throughout the development phases of Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3. On the first day of TGS 2018, the Souls community was treated to new Sekiro videos. The first was a brand new trailer for the game, exclusively made for TGS.
"たとえひとたび敗れるとも、命を落とし、主を必ず取り戻す。それが我が忍びなれば。」私はかつて修羅を見ました。
不思議に確かにもらい受けた。
久しいな
フクロウのせがれよ。
邪魔立てするか、巫女の忍び。
狼よ、我が血と共に生きてくれ。
The second video is a demo gameplay prepared by PS Underground, showcasing a boss battle with the true corrupted monk.
And then we came out into this beautiful, colorful
it's vibrant.
area here. FromSoftware has always been just exceptional at environmental design, and I feel like it's really refreshing to see them have a chance to kind of spread their wings and do something different here.
Oh, absolutely. They have a beautiful aesthetic, and the juxtaposition of going out of the cave into this brightly lit, gorgeous orange-red environment is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But as with most things from software, the serenity doesn't last very long.
Oh! Speak of the devil.
Speak of the devil, and now we get to fight the
Speak
corrupted
of the
monk.
corrupted monk, yeah.
Look at her. I love the cackling.
That's great.
That's one of my favorite parts of FromSoftware games. It's just the voice acting, the sound design.
I love the way that this boss is animated too, so fluid, so just kind of smooth.
Yes, and her clothes all flow. Everything is in motion.
It's almost elegant.
Yes, and you can see when she does her attacks, leaves will fly up off the bridge.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then again, I am going to try to take on a very difficult enemy while I'm talking. We'll see what happens.
What's your win rate against this boss?
It's not super good, I can tell you that.
What is it when you're not trying to host an episode of a Let's Play style?
I was going to say, I'm sure it's much easier when you're not trying to talk. Ooh!
Nice.
I would say I have about a 70% success rate.
Okay. All right. I like those odds.
Practice makes perfect.
Practice does make perfect.
Glad it's not me playing right now.
If you're old and your skills have rusted, it doesn't really help.
I love the setting.
Oh, come on, man! You can't be that old.
All right, you got me. So I don't know where she's going to come. I can't lock onto her at this point.
That's interesting.
But I can escape if need be.
Oh, nice.
But she can still get me from up here. So
she can chase you up there as well.
Yes, she can. So you can
Stay
see
mobile.
She can still get me. She's
cleared the fog there.
Every attack in the book.
Oof. I like that there are different phases that this fight is kind of going
Yes. So now I can resurrect. I get a second chance on this fight, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help me, especially if I can't get out of the way of her unblockable attack quick enough.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see what I can do here.
You got this.
So right there, you can see I did a couple of different things.
That
I
was
was able to dodge her sweep attack, and I jumped off of her.
Oh, yeah. So is that like you jumped to her and then jumped again and you like used her like a springboard?
That is exactly what I did.
Wow, okay.
Oh. And right there, I did a mikiri, which means I dodged into her attack.
Man, there's a lot going on in this game.
Yes, yes there is. We want to make sure that we keep players challenged, keep them on their toes, but it's fair.
Very cool.
Oh, man.
In our section on game production, we discussed the role of a producer. Robert Conkey highlighted that, besides handling project management responsibilities, he must also possess extensive knowledge about the game, thoroughly understanding it. This expertise allows him to offer information and share insights about it during events and promotions. This essential aspect of a producer's role was evident during the first day of TGS 2018, specifically in the Sekiro event hosted by PlayStation, where Robert Conkey and Yasuhiro Kitao actively participated. If you recall our Bloodborne video, Sony organized a similar event where Masaki Yamagiwa, Bloodborne's producer, faced the challenge of completing the Bloodborne demo within a limited time frame. He surpassed this challenge admirably, earning cheers from the attending Souls fans. Let's watch this clip and see if Robert Conkey is up to the task of being a Sekiro expert on top of his project manager duties.
さてプレイステーションブース本日最後のステージとなります。今注目のプレイステーションタイトルをピックアップ。プレイステーションプレゼンツライブショー TGS2018 へお越しいただきありがとうございます。ここからの時間はここ東京ゲームショウはもちろん全世界注目のフロムソフトウェア完全新作タイトル 赤炉シャドウズ対トゥワイスのショータイムお送りします。ステージにご登場いただいたのはフロムソフトウェアプロモーターの北尾さん、そして共同開発者であるアクティビジョンのプロデューサーロバート・コンキーさんです。
こんにちは。
では一人一人ご挨拶をお願いします。
はい、フロムソフトウェアのプロモーターの北尾です。よろしくお願いします。
お願いします。
はい、アクティビジョンのプロデューサーをやってるコンキロバートと申します。よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。ロバートさん、
はい、
どうですか、ユーザーデーも始まった東京ゲーム、すごい人ですよね。
すごいですね、本当に。はい、もう何年間も作ってきて、ようやく日本のユーザーさんにプレイしてもらって、すごい嬉しいです。
ちょっと荒廃した枯れた世界観でしたが、ここでは一見して、日本古来のというか美しい紅葉が舞い咲くところですね。
さあ現れたのが何でしょう。
破壊層ボスでございます。
これがボス。さあここからがロバートさんが見せてくれるはず。
うまく弾いて、
おっと弾いてる、タイミング合ってる。
素晴らしい。
すごい。これは昨日のリハーサルでは見られなかった光景。乗ってあれ
でもちょっと危ない、
ちょっと危ない。ちょっとやっぱ言い過ぎるのもよくねえな。
本当に大きいのと、身長も3メーターぐらいあるんですが、このなぎなた自体がですね、5メーターぐらいはあろうかという非常にうまい、立体的な。
さあユーザーの皆さん、ここまで来られる方はそれなりにいたんですか。
結構いましたね。ここまではいけたんですけども、やっぱりですね、敵の攻撃を弾くのがどうしても難しくて、例えばヒットアンドアウェイになってしまったりとか、そうすると体感にダメージをどんどん与えていくことはできないんですよ、なかなか。
なるほど。
なので敵を弾いたり、あるいはギシュニングを使って攻撃したりということが大事になってきます。弾きからの2冊1回目。
いった。素晴らしい。何かが起きております。北尾さん、なんすかこれは。
これはちょっと幻影ヒートアップして幻影を出しているというところですね。ワイヤーを使って逃げていきましょう。ロバートさん、回復薬がですね、もう残り1個しかないんで、
ですよね。なんかさっきから回復しガブ飲みしてたんで。いや
ここで守り飴、防御力アップの守り飴をもうついに最後の
飲んじゃいました
ね。
ごくりといって、
さっきなかった
呼吸を合わせ、
ナイス、全部弾いてきました。
さあいいぞ。
素晴らしい。これはもうこのまま倒しきってほしいところですね。
いってくれロバートさん。
間合いを詰めて、
当たってる。
今のは危険のマークが出たらジャンプかもしくはステップ、どちらかで避けるんですけども、ジャンプ攻撃だと間違えてしまったところですね。怒涛の攻めですね。
ちょっと合わなくなってきたか。
残念です。
さあ集中力を戻して頼むロバートさん。
離れてしまう。やばい。これはこれは結構やばいです。あと1回はこの戦いの中で改正ができるので、これは飴を舐めた方がいいかもしれない。
さあ舐めました。
やばい。
大丈夫かロバートさん。本日ラストのステージ、ぜひとも綺麗に終わっていただきたい。さあ会場からもという声が漏れる。しかしそれを跳ね返す我らがロバートさん。当たる危ない。攻めるロバートさん。素晴らしい。
On the night of November 16th, 2018, the gaming community was taken by surprise when Miyazaki received the Golden Joystick Lifetime Achievement Award. To To truly understand the significance of this honor, it's essential to delve into the background of the awarding body and the award itself. The Golden Joystick Award stands as Britain's most esteemed video game award ceremony and holds the distinction of being the second oldest video game award-giving body globally. Over time, it has acknowledged and celebrated numerous eminent game creators by presenting them with the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. Here is the full list of recipients, which includes Hidetaka Miyazaki. What's most interesting about the awarding event is the choice of presenters. We can confidently assert that the highlight of the ceremony for Miyazaki wasn't solely the award itself, but the individuals who presented it, giving him the recognition. If you recall from our earlier video, we delved into Miyazaki's childhood. As he wasn't permitted to play video games during his youth, he sought alternatives in the form of adventure books. Among his cherished game books, his favorites were created by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. These two authors created the fighting fantasy choose-your-own-adventure RPG books that Miyazaki immersed himself in and thoroughly enjoyed during his early years. Even after assuming roles as a game director and a company president, Miyazaki consistently refers to these adventure books as his wellspring of inspiration and frequently revisits them. Thus, after his long journey from being a fan of adventure books to becoming a game planner and later a game director, it was only fitting that at the pinnacle of his journey, he should reunite with the two individuals who influenced him the most, his childhood heroes, serving as the presenters of the most prestigious Game Creator Award possible. We are delighted to present the full awarding event for Miyazaki here.
Now, ladies and gents, I know we're getting to the end. I will ask just for your attention properly for this one, because our next award, very, very special indeed. It's Lifetime Achievement. Now, this year's recipient is joining a roster that includes luminaries like Sid Meier, Eiji Aonuma, Hideo Kojima, Ken Levine, and the late Satoru Iwata. Their work has changed the way we talk about games, introducing whole generations of gamers and game developers to new ways of telling stories and challenging the player. And this is very, very exciting, and not least for me, here to present the award, two legendary, genuinely legendary figures who made my childhood much more exciting. Authors, entrepreneurs, and fighting fantasy co-creators, it's Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone.
Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon. Little did we know that 37 years ago, when Steve and I first started writing fighting fantasy and sorcery game books, that a young man or young boy in Japan also read them too in his native language. And he would go on to become an incredible games designer who we all know and love. And it's a great honor that we're here today to appreciate together the great work he's achieved and how we in some way inspired him to do that. So, Steve, say a few words.
We're very proud to have been even asked to present this award to a true genius of game design. And I think that's it.
Well, he did actually go on to create some of the best games in the world and also some of the hardest games. I don't think I've even finished the first one. So it's our great pleasure to present this year's Lifetime Achievement Award to Mr. Hidetaka Miyazaki-san.
Well done. Are you here? Are you here or not?
And I think we have a little VT.
This year's Lifetime Achievement recipient is a huge success today, but he had a modest upbringing and spent his childhood poring over books borrowed from his local library. The works he found, horror books such as Bram Stoker's Dracula and the fighting fantasy Choose Your Own Adventure series, would go on to define his career. Mr. Hidetaka Miyazaki joined FromSoftware in 2004, working at first on the Armored Core series, but it was when he moved on to a fantasy project on the verge of cancellation that everything changed. Demon Souls introduced his signature style, ethereal and mysterious, punishingly hard yet always fair. It was a game that asked a lot of its players and rewarded them in kind. Mr. Miyazaki has built on that foundation in the astounding Dark Souls series, in the gothic horror of Bloodborne, and his forthcoming ninja adventure, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. The setting may change, but Mr. Miyazaki's style of game design is a constant. In an era of long tutorials and endless hand-holding, his games are a breath of fresh air, respecting the player's ability to surmount the toughest challenges, if only they are prepared to die and try again.
Ladies and gents, be upstanding for your Lifetime Achievement recipients.
ありがとうございます。FromSoftware の宮崎です。
Thank you very much. I'm Miyazaki from FromSoftware.
このお二人の大ファンなのでちょっと何を喋るか忘れてしまいました。
I'm such a huge fan of these two guys that I've almost forgotten what I was meant to say. 今回はそのゴールデンジョイスティックの非常に栄誉ある賞に選んでいただいてですね、驚いてますし、非常に光栄に思っています。身が引き締まる思いでおります。 It's such a surprise and an honor to receive this prestigious Golden Joystick Award. I'm quite humbled.
で、この賞自体はですね、私個人というよりは、今まで私と一緒にゲームを作ってきてくれた、そして情熱を共有してくれたみんなに与えられた賞だと思っています。なので、フロムソフトウェアのチームのメンバー、そしてパブリッシャー様はじめとする外部の共同してくれた多くの皆様に改めて感謝をし、また喜びを分かち合いたいというふうに思っています。
This award is not just my award, it goes out to everyone who has worked with me over the years making games, everyone who's shared this passion with me. And so I want to thank again everyone who has collaborated with FromSoftware, everyone in FromSoftware, our publishers. Thanks again for everything.
そしていつも僕を支えてくれる家族と何よりもですね、ゲームを遊んでくれて楽しんでくれて、そして評価してくれた多くのファンに感謝したいと思います。
Thank you to my family for all of their support, and more than anything, thank you to the players, to everyone who has played, enjoyed, and appreciated my games.
私であり、我々FromSoftwareがですね、シンプルに面白いゲーム作るぞというだけで、ここまでゲーム制作を続けてこれている一番大きな理由は、間違いなくユーザーの皆さんの支持だと思っています。本当にありがとう。皆さんと同じ時代にですね、ゲーム制作に従事できて本当に幸せです。
And it's thanks to you, all of you, really, all the players, that I've been able to carry on making games with the one simple goal of making games that are interesting. And I'm so glad to have been able to make games in these exciting times with all of you.
僕自身はですね、機会がある限りですが、ゲームを作り続けていくと思います。そして次のゲーム、またその先のゲームも皆さんにとって面白い、価値のあるゲームになるように、頑張っていきますので、今後ともよろしくお願いします。期待に応えるよう頑張ります。
I plan to carry on making games for as long as I'm able, and I will do my very best to make sure that they're games that you will enjoy. So thank you for your continued support in advance.
はい、そして、これ言わないと怒られちゃうんで言いますが、直近では3月に発売のセキロシャドウズダイトワイスをぜひよろしくお願いします。
And coming up very soon, we have Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is due to be launched in March. So you can look forward to that.
ありがとう。
Thank you very much.
Miyazaki expressed genuine gratitude for receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award. During an interview, the host inquired, "The previous recipients of the Lifetime Achievement Award include Ken Levine, Hideo Kojima, the former president of Nintendo Satoru Iwata, Hironobu Sakaguchi, and Sid Meier, among other prominent figures. How do you feel about joining this distinguished group?" To which Miyazaki responded, "It's a great honor, and I'm genuinely surprised. To be honest, I still can't quite figure out why I'm among this prestigious list of individuals, so I might be perplexed by the situation. However, one thing is for sure. This award is thanks to the colleagues I've worked with, the players who have enjoyed our games, and the users who have supported us. In order to repay this debt to all of them, I'm determined to create interesting and valuable games in the future." On a personal note, I was extremely happy that the presenters for the Lifetime Achievement Award were Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston. They are the authors of the gamebook series Fighting Fantasy, which is a fundamental experience for my fantasy world. I didn't know in advance that they would be presenting the award, so I couldn't help but feel like a child with a heightened level of excitement when I saw them on stage. 2 months after receiving the Golden Joystick Award, Miyazaki himself participated in a gaming event called Taipei Game Show 2019 in Taiwan. Similar to the Tokyo Game Show, the event buzzed with eager fans eager to try out game demos at the various booths. Yasuhiro Kitao delivered a presentation, while a popular game streamer showcased the demo on stage, engaging in a battle against the same boss that Robert Conke had fought during TGS 2018. During his presentation, Kitao pointed out different strategic paths in the game world. These included underwater routes, climbing buildings with the grappling hook for tactical advantages from high spots, and sneaking to listen in on enemy conversations for hints about weaknesses and strategies. Following the stage event, a media interview featuring Miyazaki took place. With strict guidelines in place, no recording or filming of the interview was permitted. Upon the conclusion of the session, Taiwanese media and localization staff formed lines to request autographs and capture commemorative photos, showcasing Miyazaki's immense popularity as one of Japan's renowned game creators. A week following the Taipei Game Show, FromSoftware unveiled the story preview trailer of Sekiro on their YouTube channel. This video introduces Sekiro's storyline and reveals the game's opening sequence.
In the closing years of the Sengoku era, Japan was consumed by perpetual conflict.
What's the matter, Stray? Nothing left to lose? Well, would you look at that? Will you join me, starving wolf? That day, I pulled you from the battlefield. I had no idea what you'd become.
We're now at the release month of Sekiro. On March 10th, 2019, Sony Interactive Entertainment and FromSoftware hosted the Sekiro Countdown Live in Tokyo as a pre-release premium event, celebrating the upcoming launch of the game. At this gathering, attendees got the opportunity to experience the initial stages of Sekiro, scheduled for release on March 22nd. Alongside gameplay demonstrations, there was an overview presentation introducing key elements of the game. Visitors were given the chance to play Sekiro for approximately 15 minutes, starting from the beginning of the game. Furthermore, for those interested, there was an opportunity to challenge the boss known as the True Corrupted Monk. If you recall from our Dark Souls 2 video, FromSoftware and Bandai Namco hosted a similar special event to commemorate the game's completion. Likewise, in our Bloodborne video, FromSoftware and Sony also organized a completion party to celebrate the imminent release of Bloodborne. During both occasions, special guests were invited, and unique collaborations and marketing events were unveiled, building anticipation for the game's launch. During the Sekiro event, Yasuhiro Kitao and Hatsune Matsushima acted as MCs. Kitao discussed Activision at the start, and although Robert Conke wasn't present, his video message conveyed gratitude and excitement for the game's release. During the presentation, Kitao provided an overview of Sekiro's narrative, delving into the background story of Wolf and his master, Kuro. He highlighted that Sekiro's focus on a central character makes the storyline more accessible compared to games like Dark Souls. However, he emphasized that the aspect where each player's gameplay shapes the story remains consistent, allowing for continual analysis and interpretation throughout the game. Following this, Kitao shifted the focus to the game's combat mechanics. He explained crucial concepts such as the posture mechanic, its correlation with enemy health, damage, and how the recovery rate functions. Additionally, he showcased slides detailing the stealth mechanics, enabling players to execute the shinobi death blow on unsuspecting foes. Kitao then proceeded to highlight another significant feature of Sekiro's combat, the shinobi prosthetic. He elaborated on the various tools that Wolf can collect and their functionality within the game. Subsequently, he introduced the grappling hook, emphasizing how it revolutionizes traversal within the game world. Finally, he gave details on the game's resurrection mechanics and the skill trees designed for upgrading the main character. Following Kitao's presentation, Masaru Yamamura, the lead game designer of Sekiro, took the stage for a live gameplay demonstration, showcasing several features of the game. These included the seamless ability to switch prosthetic tools with a single button press, surviving high falls into water, and the tactic of eavesdropping on enemy conversations during stealth to gather valuable information. During the demonstration, Yamamura exhibited various combat techniques. He executed stealthy shinobi death blows without alerting enemies, utilized an enemy's blood to disorient and defeat another opponent, and demonstrated the effective use of the Mikiri counter to evade enemy attacks and counter efficiently. In the culmination of the demonstration, Yamamura engaged in combat with the mini-boss named Juzu the Drunkard. He shared that Juzu's strength often leads to defeat approximately 1 out of every 4 attempts. Unfortunately, during the live demo, Yamamura was unable to overcome Juzu and was defeated himself. After the demo, Kitao and the team engaged in a question and answer session with the audience. The queries revolved around various aspects such as the number of weapons available in the game, the available endings, and details concerning the upgrading of prosthetic tools. In the event's final segment, renowned music producer and composer Teddy Lloyd took the stage to showcase a battle against the boss, True Corrupted Monk. Teddy Lloyd, an avid fan of FromSoftware's action RPGs, expressed excitement about playing Sekiro. However, similar to Masaru Yamamura, Teddy Lloyd's live demonstration also culminated in defeat against the True Corrupted Monk. Yasuhiro Kitao concluded the event with a message expressing gratitude to the team and inviting everyone to anticipate the game's release. A day after the Sekiro Countdown live event, PlayStation unveiled the official launch trailer for the game.
Your hunger may beget a fine shinobi. I expected no less from you, my boy. Sir. Listen, Wolf, you must never forget the Iron Code. I see defend your master with your life. If he is taken, bring him back at any cost. I see
So the noble shinobi stands in our way.
It seems fate still doesn't want you dead.
A week following the launch trailer, PlayStation released a video providing a comprehensive gameplay overview of Sekiro.
Welcome to a vision of Japan, unlike anything you've experienced before. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, is set during the closing years of the Sengoku period. It's a time of near-endless conflict and bloodshed. Journey into this unforgiving world shaped by violence and discover what secrets await in the shadows. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice follows the story of a shinobi known as the Wolf. As a young boy roaming the battlefield, he's taken in by the Owl.
What's the matter, Stray? Nothing left to lose.
The Wolf is assigned to protect a new master known as the Divine Heir.
You will pledge your life in my service.
As you command. The boy is the descendant of a mysterious bloodline, making him the target of the Ashina clan.
Leave this to me.
So the noble shinobi stands in our way.
You must never forget the Shinobi Code. If your master is taken, bring him back at any cost.
What is this? The Wolf's prosthetic arm changes how he fights. This mysterious shinobi tool can be outfitted with an arsenal of powerful items, like the grappling hook. Use it to explore new areas or gain a tactical advantage. Break shields with the loaded axe. Drag enemies closer with the loaded spear, or set them ablaze with the flame vent. Stun and confuse enemies with shuriken and firecrackers, or deflect heavy attacks with the loaded umbrella. Mix these powerful tools with your sword to find new ways to kill ingeniously and tip the odds of the fight your way. Combat in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice requires strategy, and the same tactics won't work against every enemy. A master shinobi must be both aggressive and versatile. Deflection is just one way to turn an enemy's attacks into an opportunity. Each deflection will deal damage to an enemy's posture. Keep it up, and the enemy's posture will break, leaving them vulnerable. Use this critical moment to land serious damage with a shinobi death blow. Enemies at times will use perilous attacks that cannot be blocked. In these situations, you'll need to make a split-second decision. Will you risk great harm to yourself and attempt to counter the attack? Or will you use this moment to fall back and prepare for your next move? Success against stronger enemies will come down to learning their distinct tactics and responding with your own unique offensive and defensive maneuvers. You'll also find that certain situations allow for a silent approach. Use your blade for a quiet takedown. Or eavesdrop to gain vital information about your enemies. In Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, you won't survive every encounter, but death is not always defeat. The wolf has his limited ability to return from the dead using resurrection. After resurrecting, the wolf is vulnerable. If he's killed, it will mean losing valuable resources and potentially other, more personal consequences. Performing a shinobi death blow or resting at a sculptor's idol will allow the wolf to resurrect once again. With each battle won, you'll begin to unlock new skills that help you fight and defend. You'll discover shinobi tools that expand the capabilities of your prosthetic arm and find materials like gunpowder to upgrade them. Your journey into darkness will be fraught with challenge and surrounded by death. But if you execute different strategies in battle and leverage the powerful tools in your arsenal, you can rise to any challenge.
Now that we have reached the week of Sekiro's release, it's time to explore the major features of the game that have made it into the production version. The primary and most significant difference between Sekiro and the other Souls games is its being a single-player game. Not only does it lack the option for players to seek help from others online, but within the game itself, it doesn't offer NPCs to assist in battling major bosses. This stands in stark contrast to games like Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne, where even in offline mode, players can summon in-game characters to aid in overcoming challenging bosses. This single-player feature of Sekiro later becomes one of the contributing factors to the perceived inaccessibility of the game for players struggling with its difficulty. Regarding Sekiro's new single-player approach, Miyazaki explained, "There are several reasons behind the decision to exclude online elements. We wanted to eliminate the constraints associated with multiplayer and focus entirely on the single-player experience in this work. Additionally, the fixed main character is most appropriate for this work and provides a unique gameplay feel. In essence, it comes down to the need to focus limited resources on delivering a unique and engaging single-player experience that aligns with Sekiro's distinctive gameplay and challenges." One positive side effect of the single-player mode is the ability to pause the game, a feature absent from other Souls games. Furthermore, without the availability of summons, bosses can be designed with a single character in mind. Yasuhiro Kitao commented on this topic, stating, "When creating these play spaces, we don't have to consider how players will interact with each other in these maps, or how they might exploit the space through cooperation. This freedom allows us to focus on the player experience and fully exploit the lack of restrictions associated with creating a multiplayer-based game, allowing our imagination to run wild in these places." The second significant change in Sekiro is the use of a fixed protagonist, unlike Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where players could create their own character and choose a class. This freedom allowed the story to be conveyed through atmosphere and world building. In Sekiro, however, there is only one class and a sole pre-made character available for players to choose from, resulting in a more straightforward storytelling approach due to the fixed perspective while exploring the world. Regarding the use of a fixed protagonist, Miyazaki shared, "There were many things I feel we learned throughout the development process. But the biggest thing that surprised us was just how much having a fixed protagonist influences the story's focus. Our previous titles put this focus on the story woven by the world itself, whereas shifting it onto the protagonist allows for a completely different type of storytelling, which I feel was something very fresh and appealing. We still believe those aspects of storytelling from our previous titles are present, such as putting the player's experience first by not forcing the story on them, or by giving their imagination room to work with fragmented elements. When Bloodborne was released, a common complaint among some players was the limited number of available weapons in the game, especially when compared to titles like Dark Souls or its sequels. These games featured not only a wider array of weapon types, but also numerous instances within each weapon category. In Sekiro, the limitation goes beyond just one main weapon type, as players are restricted to a single primary weapon throughout the entire game. When discussing this significant change, Miyazaki shared, "The right-hand katana is fixed as your primary weapon for the whole game. This approach allows us to deeply explore what it means to master that katana as your single main weapon. While we do sacrifice customization and variety, we compensate for that in the left hand. We offer various prosthetic tools, which can be upgraded, providing users with the element of choice and freedom in how they strategize and use these two weapons together." As mentioned by Miyazaki earlier, the introduction of the prosthetic arm in Sekiro compensates for the absence of weapon variety. This rationale echoes a similar approach used in Bloodborne, where weapon customization was achieved through weapon sockets and a wide variety of blood gems capable of significantly enhancing weapon attributes. Regarding the prosthetic arm, Miyazaki explained, "The prosthetic arm itself functions as a special feature throughout the game. It defines your player style, represents a significant element of choice, and is the most prominent aspect of expressing the eccentricity of the ninja image in this game." Another important point is that the effectiveness of tactical options for specific situations against enemies has been amplified compared to previous games. How you approach enemies and the situations in which you engage them have become more crucial. Sekiro places a strong emphasis on overcoming challenges by utilizing all the elements provided, unlike previous works. For numerous players who haven't entirely embraced or mastered the katana as the primary weapon against most bosses in the game, the prosthetic arm offers a wide range of creative options to defeat them. Some bosses have vulnerabilities to specific prosthetic arm tools, enabling players to exploit these weaknesses for victory. One of the game mechanics that sets the Souls games apart from other action RPGs is the presence of a stamina bar, which essentially governs the pace of combat in the game. This mechanic is instrumental in preventing the Souls games from devolving into button-mashing action games like others in the genre. Whether you're attacking, blocking, or dodging, the flow of movement is influenced by the stamina bar. However, in Sekiro, Miyazaki opted to remove the stamina bar and introduced a new mechanic centered around posture. Now, instead of the action revolving around dodging, creating distance, and using hit-and-run tactics, Sekiro's system focuses on sustained combat and the clashing of swords. Key to this is the character's posture. Once the enemy's posture bar is filled, it becomes vulnerable to a devastating attack called a shinobi death blow. When asked about the modification in the action flow of Sekiro, Miyazaki explained, "In order to realize more intense, edge-of-your-seat combat, we found that this change was necessary. This was something we had envisioned from the very early stages of development as a very ninja-like style of combat with a Japanese flavor to it." If you remember earlier in Meet the Team section, we introduced the core members of Miyazaki's team. One of them was Masaru Yamamura, Sekiro's lead game designer, and responsible for designing the core combat mechanic of Sekiro involving the posture system. Here is a short clip from one of Game Informer's documentary on Sekiro, where Yamamura shares insight on the combat of the game.
So when fans of your previous games pick up the controller and start playing Sekiro, what will stand out to them? What will be the biggest surprises about how it's different?
So in previous titles, just to, first an example from Dark Souls is you have to, defend with your shield and then strike back. It's this kind of like give and take. Bloodborne, you had to kind of step out of harm's way and then dive back in and attack. It was like in and out kind of infighting. Sekiro is more like katana on katana action, so we're really concentrating on that blade-to-blade duels and the sword fighting aspect. So, we feel that once users have taken to and mastered the deflect technique, they'll be turning, not only dealing damage through their own attacks, but when they're being attacked by the enemies, they're turning that to their advantage. And we feel like that's a really unique aspect this time. And yeah, we hope players are really surprised and enjoy this.
But you want players to focus on deflecting. That's the key. That's how they need to change their brain.
Of course, there are other elements, such as the prosthetic tools and the stealth. But yeah, we feel the katana and the way you're able to deflect almost any attack is going to provide the key and provide this new thrill, yeah, to the combat system.
How does it feel to change up From's combat in such a big way for this game?
You know, it is tough to make these big changes, but we don't want to keep doing the same thing as a studio and as individuals. And so when Miyazaki came to us and said he wanted to make this brand new game and he tasked me with a brand new battle system, then I was really excited. And you can see, you know, he has that same excitement, and this spreads to the team for making this new project.
There's a lot of head scratching on your part, a lot of drawing on a whiteboard and thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of head scratching. The first big change is the fact that we're departing from, you know, what we're known for, the Soul series. And, you know, in that, it's like, we got to make something new. We've got to change stuff. And so at first, when we were initially creating the game, it was difficult to branch away from that. And it, you know, ended up being quite similar. But, you know, through that kind of process and, you know, going back to the drawing board and rethinking the systems, then we've been able to create the deflect system and the katana combat system that you see today.
What was the most challenging system to create? Which one went through the most iteration?
So it's something I'm still struggling with, and that the team is, you know, still finds hard to this day. But in making this new combat system with the deflect system, we've really had to rethink the way that we make these fine-tuning and adjustments to each battle. So the deflect is not really like a parry in fighting games or previous Dark Souls games where you have a kind of a large window of leniency. It's very precise, and in order to teach players this, we need the enemy animations and the attack animations to be very precise. We need them to see what's coming and to learn these movements and then to react accordingly. And so when it comes down to tweaking these attacks, we can't just do it on a parameter level. We have to actually tweak frame by frame the animations and remove frames, add frames here and there to make sure it looks pitch perfect and that the user's going to be able to react to that intuitively.
Is it the biggest design challenge you've had in your career so far?
It's always a challenge to create these systems that adapt to, that fit each game that we produce, but especially for Sekiro, when the time came to make these big changes and to distance ourselves a little bit from the Soul series, you know, this was in itself the biggest challenge, I feel.
Do you want to talk about designing the death blow system, especially having like the numerical countdown of how many are left there?
The death blow was originally known as Ninsatsu and Tenchu, and this was kind of one source of inspiration for us. Also building the game around this posture system and, you know, deflecting blows and whittling down your opponent's posture and staggering them, we needed a really good feel-good finisher to kind of clinch that battle. And so yeah, the death blow is something that we've really put a lot of time and effort into.
As early as our Demon's Souls video, Miyazaki has emphasized that death holds a special meaning in his games, considering it an opportunity for learning and a chance to try again. When combined with the mechanic of corpse run, dying in the Souls games becomes a fundamental aspect of gameplay that is integral to the overall experience. However, in Sekiro, Miyazaki introduced the new mechanic of resurrection, granting Wolf a second chance to continue the fight. When asked why he introduced resurrection to a game centered on frequent deaths, Miyazaki explained, "My idea of a ninja fighting, as opposed to, say, a knight, is that ninjas can't endure a lot of damage. They take significant risks and are highly vulnerable during combat. It's about fighting on the edge, where a slight mistake could result in defeat. With knights, there's more resilience due to armor and such. The concept of such high-risk combat inspired the introduction of resurrection. Imagining combat as a risky endeavor where one small mistake could be fatal, sending players back every time they die and having to return to their previous position would disrupt the game's tempo. Resurrection was conceived to maintain the game's flow. While battles are intense, not having to restart entirely upon death helps balance the gameplay and allows for riskier edge-of-the-knife type encounters. This mechanic is also tied to the game's narrative, revolving around the mystery surrounding the main character and the young lord. Resurrection plays a role in that context. One of the general concepts for the game is that you can kill ingeniously. A ninja is so resourceful that he can even make use of his own death to gain an advantage. That's kind of the idea we had. Miyazaki added that as compared to other Souls games, death in Sekiro has a more significant role. He said, "Death influences Sekiro in 3 ways. It maintains gameplay flow while creating risky situations, encourages creative use of it, and is central to the story's theme of resurrection." There's one thing I'd like to make sure isn't misunderstood. The resurrection system was not introduced to make the game easier. If anything, it actually can make the game harder, because it allows us to push the edge of risky combat where the player can die at any moment. Of course, if you could resurrect infinitely, it would eliminate the tension. So we introduced certain limitations, such as consuming a specific resource to limit the number of times you can resurrect. You might also not be able to resurrect immediately after using it, and even if you have resurrection points left, if you keep dying in the same spot, it won't work. We implemented these measures to prevent players from easily trivializing the game by repeatedly using resurrection. The Souls games are known for their remarkable vertical map design. In our earlier video, Miyazaki shared that his natural inclination is to continuously stack a map vertically rather than horizontally. With the introduction of the grappling hook, players gained the ability to navigate more dynamically through multi-layered environments. Miyazaki emphasized that this new mechanic plays a pivotal role in achieving the shinobi type of character that they envisioned. He stated, "The grappling hook facilitates versatile and dynamic movement throughout the map. Coupled with an array of shinobi tools, it enables various tricks and finesse, essential elements in Sekiro's gameplay that reflect the protagonist's nature. We aim to visually express this with an easily recognizable appearance and visual language. Also, well, the idea of a shinobi prosthetic was pretty cool. We're all very fond of the design, and it's one of the ways we've been able to incorporate the flavor and flights of fancy we're known for." When Bloodborne was released, it introduced a key combat mechanic known as the visceral attack, where your character executes a high-damaging attack on an enemy. You perform a visceral attack by parrying the enemy, staggering them, or executing a charged attack from behind. Sekiro, on the other hand, brought forth an even more powerful and devastating mechanic compared to Bloodborne, termed the Shinobi Death Blow. This maneuver depletes an enemy's entire current life bar, with only major bosses surviving. You execute a Shinobi Death Blow by either filling the enemy's posture bar or executing a successful stealth attack. In an interview, the host inquired about this topic, asking, "The Shinobi Death Blow, how did that come to be? Were you just really excited about visceral attacks from Bloodborne and the backstab attacks in Dark Souls, and you just wanted to do that to everything?" Miyazaki clarified, "It's not like we just love to do these critical attacks on everything, it's an evolution of the elements. The death blow, the idea itself, is one of the things we got a hint of from Tenchu, from the original publications of that series. Also, death blows are not just kind of a one-off, one-time critical attack, like a backstab or a riposte or the visceral attack. It's something that can be initiated from stealth, as you saw yesterday, allowing you a way in. It's also something that is a result of trying to find or trying to make a momentary weakness in your opponent. So the battle you experienced yesterday, with the swordplay, it's kind like a climax to that, to each and every one of those battles. We feel, in that sense, that it's different. The concept and the way we've created and the way we've molded it is different from a straight-up riposte or a straight-up visceral attack. The shinobi has the kind of elements of both offense and defensive that he has to use simultaneously. The death blow is sort of like a result of that. I use the word climax. It's kind of like a treat or reward for the player at the end of that struggle, that clash of swords. Another brand new mechanic introduced in Sekiro is a skill tree-based upgrade system. Purchasable combat arts and upgrades to the protagonist's prosthetic arm replace the traditional stat point allocation. This presents a leveling scheme that appears to be more approachable compared to the number-based builds typical in Souls games. When questioned about the choice of a skill tree system over the stat system, Miyazaki explained, "The concept behind a stats leveling system is to cater to diverse player builds. This entails abilities usable by mages, strength users wielding great swords, various sorceries, and pyromancies. And this means that not all users have to use everything. They can specialize, or they can focus on their build. The idea of this game and the multifaceted ninja means you have to use everything in your arsenal, everything at your disposal to overcome these challenges. The introduction of a skill system meant that we could allow people to unlock every facet of this multi-talented ninja. Having this locked behind parameters, or having to boost certain parameters over others, meant that if you came across a tough enemy with a specific strategical grammar to him, like a specific weakness, they would have to go back and retrace their steps and uncover this, boost these parameters, and what have you. Having these as skills and items that you can gradually acquire allows them to specialize in everything to a degree, and to really become that really multi-talented, multifaceted shinobi. Among all the Souls games, including Elden Ring, Sekiro introduced the most new mechanics to expand the player's traversal abilities within the game world. Sekiro notably introduced the ability for characters to swim and dive, features absent even in Elden Ring. It was also the first to implement a dedicated jumping button, enabling wall jumping. With the addition of the grappling hook, Sekiro allowed players to navigate across water, land, and air, enhancing movement dynamics. In an interview, the host inquired about how these new traversal options influenced the team's approach to boss design, stating, "With changes to movement such as the grappling system, wall jumping, and swimming, how has that changed certain approaches to boss design?" Miyazaki explained, "You mentioned the swimming. This is not present in boss fights as such. This is something that caters more to exploration and general traversal, just to add a little bit of change of pace, something a little bit different just to cool things down." However, in boss design, these new traversal options and stealth tactics have a definite impact. They significantly enhance dynamic movement within the boss arena, benefiting both the player and the boss itself. It adds a dynamic element to the interaction between the player and the boss. Previously, players might have been limited to circling around a boss's feet and attacking its lower parts. Now, with these movement options, both the player and the boss can fully utilize the entire arena. As for stealth in mid-boss and boss fights, its use varies depending on the situation. It's an additional layer of complexity, not present in every boss fight, but at times it might cleverly or subtly enhance the experience. The mechanic of corpse run has been a defining element across the Souls games, so much so that it has become a feature often emulated by other Souls-like games. The most evolved iteration of this mechanic can be found in Bloodborne, where Miyazaki introduced the feature of enemies picking up the dropped blood echoes of a player, requiring their defeat to reclaim the currency. This distinctive feature has been emulated by other Souls-like games, as seen in instances such as the game Hollow Knight and Salt and Sanctuary. Hence, many within the Souls community were surprised when Miyazaki decided to remove the corpse run mechanic in Sekiro. When asked about the reason for this change, Miyazaki explained, "The reason there's no corpse run as is first of all, we don't really want to keep doing the same thing over and over again with our games. We want to try different approaches and different switching up the systems. Speaking of death penalties, we do want to incorporate a new sense of demerit or a disadvantage to death. We want the player to fear death in the same way they did before, but this will take on a different shape this time. If we were to just add in corpse running or having to go retrieve something on top of that, it would have felt too messy or too desperate or a little too much like there's too much at stake. We want to concentrate on the new systems such as the resurrection system as well. Speaking of resurrection, this time we're taking this into elements of story as well. So there's a reason for coming back to life, and there's more general themes and concepts around death and rebirth. So this is something we wanted to explore on the gameplay side as well." One of the common complaints about the Souls games is their consistently dark or gloomy atmosphere. However, Sekiro breaks away from this tradition by presenting breathtaking vistas and landscapes. This change in visual style will also be present in Elden Ring. When asked about this decision, Miyazaki shared, "One thing we focused on in Sekiro's artistic design was the use of more vivid color. During the early stages of development, I looked back on things that inspired a series of Japanese taste and was fascinated by the beauty of these colors, deciding on them as one of the concepts for Sekiro's artistic design. We were conscious of using such colors effectively as a means of adding flair to the dynamic combat as well as painting the world around it, adding our own idiosyncrasies and dramatic fantasies in an attempt to create an original take on Sengoku, Japan, and in a way that represents us." Although rudimentary forms of stealth existed in earlier Souls games, it was only in Sekiro that a proper stealth mechanic was introduced. When stealth is combined with the newly introduced Shinobi Deathblow, their synergy creates a very powerful option for dealing with enemies and bosses in the game. Miyazaki expressed that the stealth mechanic aligns perfectly with the concept of playing as a ninja, stating, "We're preparing a number of ways for the player to feel like they're able to use everything in their arsenal in order to take on these situations. With stealth elements, it'll allow you to sneak undetected to an extent. While you're undetected, you can eavesdrop on enemies to get hints about other enemy weaknesses, strategic hints about how to approach the map in certain situations, or learn story details as well. This is a kind of a new element, and it relates nicely to the theme of the Shinobi." The Souls community often considers Sekiro as the toughest game of Miyazaki. This perspective stems from various factors. Most Souls games share comparable mechanics, but Sekiro stands out distinctly. Many players believe that their familiarity with Souls combat actually hinders their learning curve in Sekiro. This is because the muscle memory from stamina-based combat is very different from Sekiro's recommended posture-based approach. Moreover, the absence of online co-op and summonable NPCs during major boss battles inherently elevates Sekiro's level of difficulty. Additionally, the improved behavior of Sekiro's bosses adds to the challenge. Most of them can now block and deflect attacks, which differs from enemies in Souls games who typically don't use these defensive tactics. When questioned about Sekiro's difficulty in comparison to his other games, Miyazaki explained, "Our intention was to create a game that surpasses previous entries in difficulty while enabling players to utilize creativity alongside action to overcome these challenges. We aim not to disappoint players seeking a hardcore experience, while also enabling as many as possible to relish overcoming challenges. To achieve this, we've implemented and continue to fine-tune numerous systems. Ultimately, our goal is to strike a balance without making the game excessively difficult or overly simplistic." Sekiro was globally released on March 22, 2019, and garnered widespread critical and commercial success. Many critics lauded the game's combat, noting its departure from the typical style seen in FromSoftware's other similar games. They likened Sekiro's combat to a waltz, praising the diverse approaches available to tackle challenges. Additionally, they commended the posture system, hailing the new combat style as both beautiful and refreshing. While well received within the Souls community, Sekiro didn't quite match or surpass the ratings achieved by Dark Souls 2 or Bloodborne. Nonetheless, it garnered several awards, notably the Game of the Year at the SXSW Gaming Awards. However, the most anticipated accolade awaited at the 2019 Game Awards, which we'll delve into in the next section. In terms of sales, Sekiro proved to be a commercial triumph, selling 157,000 units in its first week in Japan alone. Within 10 days of its release, it had surpassed 2 million units sold. Addressing Sekiro's performance, Michel Fonseca remarked, "The fans have made Sekiro one of the most incredible game launches of 2019 so far. The game has performed admirably across all platforms, including PC, and we're thrilled by the ongoing support from both gamers and critics. It's been immensely gratifying to witness the joy fans experience as they conquer each challenge." Whenever a new Souls game is released, the topic of accessibility always arises, discussing the need for an easy mode or ways for players to adjust the game's difficulty. As evident from our early video about Demon's Souls, we already know that Miyazaki will never include a feature in his games explicitly allowing players to switch the default difficulty. In fact, there are a few things we're certain Miyazaki will never do. Firstly, release an official version of the lore of the games he has created, and secondly, add an explicit easy mode switch in his games. As expected, upon Sekiro's release, the topic of accessibility became a major point of online discussions again, with some proposing the addition of a difficulty setting for these games, while others defend the status quo. We previously noted that Sekiro, being single-player only, is inherently harder. Furthermore, with the inclusion of smarter AI for enemies and the absence of NPCs that can be summoned for offline co-op, the call for accessibility is more pronounced this time. To understand what the pro-accessibility members felt during the release of Sekiro, let's delve into Dave Thier's article in Forbes. He shared, "It's time, once again, to revisit an old saw. It was true of Dark Souls 3, it was true of Bloodborne, it was true of all the other FromSoftware games, and will keep being true until the only acceptable conclusion. One of these games finally puts in an easy mode. That hasn't happened yet, and so here we are. Sekiro needs an easy mode. The fact that these games don't have any difficulty settings means that only a certain sort of player with time, inclination, reaction speed, and lack of physical issues will ever see the final boss fight anywhere but on Twitch. This is a problem. What's particularly galling about Sekiro is that all other FromSoftware games at least had a sort of safety valve to allow you to move past the game's most difficult boss encounters with a little help by summoning other players into your game. Sekiro removes even that, and so if you run up against a brick wall, that's it. Either beat your head against that wall or stop playing. It's the lack of a summon mode that prevented me from sinking too much of my psyche in the game. I was able to beat the chained ogre without too much trouble, even without the fire thing. And so, I don't know, maybe I could keep doing well in this game, but I do not like the idea of coming up against a boss that I can't beat without a week of frustration, and so I can't let myself get obsessed with this one. There's a lot of talk about respecting the player when it comes to not including an easy mode, an idea that all players can and should play this game in this particular, punishing way. And yet I think the lack of an easy mode showcases the exact opposite. It shows an almost stunning lack of respect for players with the idea that they cannot be trusted with their own gameplay experience. That even those who want a challenging game would somehow be lured by the siren song of lower difficulties and destroy their own experience because they're too impatient or immature to know what they actually want. Just one day after Dave Thier's article, Eric Kane posted his own, defending the status quo and the decision of FromSoftware and Miyazaki to not include an explicit difficulty setting in their games. Eric Kane shared, "The option to turn down difficulty when stuck at a particularly hard boss would always be a temptation. It would be so simple to take the easy route, and then we would never learn what FromSoftware and game director Hidetaka Miyazaki hope we will learn, how to overcome the odds, and in so doing gift ourselves with a sense of pride and achievement. The beauty of a Souls game, and of Sekiro, is in the mastery of the game's systems. I felt like a virgin again when I first began playing Sekiro. It was like I was a novice Souls player, killed for the very first time. But as the days have gone by and I've kept up my plodding pace through the game, I've found myself learning its deadly ballet. I keep beating these foes that at first seemed insurmountable, not because I could change the difficulty setting or grind my way to a higher level or summon help online, but because I was persistent. I learned inch by inch from my mistakes. I found new skills that helped me in tricky situations, new prosthetics that exposed an enemy's weakness, and better timing to effectively hew my way through the mobs. Sekiro patiently teaches us how to improve, chiseling away our shortcomings and arming us with the tools we need to succeed. Like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, easy mode isn't a setting, it's something you become. Easy mode is that moment when you realize that you've improved as a player. The game keeps getting harder, but you keep getting better alongside it. It's a vicious tango, player versus environment. Choice and respect aren't always interchangeable. We live in a world of endless choices, and not every choice heightens our dignity or self-respect. Sekiro offers us a reprieve by giving us no choice at all. Play or don't play. This isn't just about the hardcore players getting the difficult game they desire, it's about the new players getting the game they deserve. The one they might have missed if they could have changed the difficulty setting to easy. We already know the stand of Miyazaki and how he views the topic of accessibility, as we have covered it in our earlier videos. However, we are fortunate that he revisited this topic in the context of Sekiro. As usual, he is very consistent in his views regarding the design of games, especially on the topic of accessibility. He said, "We don't want to include a difficulty selection because we want to bring everyone to the same level of discussion and the same level of enjoyment. So we want everyone to first face that challenge and to overcome it in some way that suits them as a player. We want everyone to feel that sense of accomplishment. We want everyone to feel elated and to join that discussion on the same level. We feel if there's different difficulties, that's going to segment and fragment the user base. People will have different experiences based on that differing difficulty level. This is something we take to heart when we design games. It's been the same way for previous titles, and it's very much the same with Sekiro." When asked about the accessibility of Sekiro when compared to his other games, Miyazaki explained, "We have tried to make it easier for people to access every part of this shinobi's arsenal. In a previous title, you had an area or a boss that could only be defeated by magic. That would be an issue because people are specializing in their build, and we've created this unnecessary wall for them. This way of building the game, it gives us greater freedom, and it gives the player greater freedom to decide how they want to tackle this, or to encourage them to try to find something else and to keep adding to their arsenal and to use every little bit of it to defeat these challenges." Before we move on from the topic of accessibility, I'd like to share my personal experience, as well as that of a well-known YouTuber who specializes in the Monster Hunter games. When I tried playing Sekiro, I was already very familiar with the Souls games. I anticipated no surprises from their future iterations. However, Sekiro was an exception. Not only did I find it more challenging than any of the previous games, but it reignited that buyer's remorse within me. reminiscent of the feeling I had when I hit a wall with Father Gascoigne in Bloodborne. For a few days, I regretted purchasing Bloodborne because I thought, if the first boss was this difficult, how much tougher would the rest of the game be? Now, Bloodborne stands as my favorite among the Souls games. The question arises, if there had been a difficulty slider, would it have become my favorite game? Only I can answer this because it's a matter of personal experience, and my response is no. If Bloodborne had an easy mode, the entire journey I had with this game, initially loathed but now cherished the most, would have been altered. I adore it precisely because of the challenges I overcame. Similarly, with Sekiro, it secured its place as my second favorite game because of the challenges I encountered. I would have deprived myself of that unique experience if I had simply been able to adjust the difficulty. Even more interesting than my previous story is Gaijin's experience with Sekiro. It's fascinating because Gaijin represents a gamer whom one might expect to possess the reflexes and expertise necessary to excel in a game like Sekiro, given his mastery in one of the franchises considered more intricate and comparatively harder than the Souls games, the Monster Hunter franchise. To draw an analogy, mastering a weapon in Monster Hunter is akin to mastering a musical instrument. In other words, the weapons in Monster Hunter offer a depth surpassing any weapon in the Souls games. Yet, Gaijin underwent the same stages as I did when playing Sekiro. He traversed the stages of self-doubt and buyer's remorse, then gradually built confidence, harbored a glimmer of hope to continue, and finally achieved triumph, feeling the mastery required to confront the game's challenges. Before delving into the stages of his experience, let's watch Gaijin in action as he battles one of the monsters in Monster Hunter. This clip might appear to showcase the ease in fighting the monster, but for anyone who has played this game, it's clear that it's not as effortless as it seems.
Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate has 92 different combinations of weapon and style. That's 14 hunter weapons with 6 styles each, and 8 different styles for prowlers. While each of them are unique and have their own pros and cons, when it comes to pure enjoyment factor, some really stand out for me. In this video, I want to go over my top 10 weapon and style combinations. Keep in mind this is what I find fun to use and is not an actual indicator of which style is so-called better than the others. It's purely based on my personal preferences. Without further ado, let's jump in. Number 10, Adept Hunting Horn. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of the Hunting Horn. I often use it with Evade Plus 2 since I like to get in close and smash the monster's face. Adept allows you to completely remove the evasion skill from your set and just tank in whatever the heck you want.
Now let's explore Gaijin's initial stage, the stage of self-doubt, documented in a video he titled, I Can't Handle This.
Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. I just want to do a quick little video to let you know that I did get Sekiro, and honestly, I'm having a love-hate relationship with the game right now. The game is fantastically made, it's gorgeous, the file size is nice and slim at 13 gigabytes. The sound design is great. It's basically a FromSoftware game. Strategy-wise, it reminds me a lot about Nioh, but Nioh I think was more complicated. This is much more streamlined, in a point that I think it's a little bit more easier to grasp, but harder to play. I actually find this game so far much more difficult than even Nioh, and if you're in for a difficult game, then you're going to love this. But if you're like me, and you get really frustrated, it might be a little bit too difficult for you, because honestly I think I'm going to stop playing it because I just don't have the time, given my lifestyle and also just my skill at these types of games, to really be spending 4 or 5 hours on every boss, which is a slight exaggeration but kind of like what I was going through today. I do like the game. I'm not blaming it at all, it's more on me, but I am happy I bought it. I think they have some cool ideas here. Even though I've only seen a sliver of them so far, and I think that they really found something special for an action game. Now, my point of absolute frustration and anger is that I was stuck at a boss. It's very early in the game, so honestly there's not a lot of spoilers. I kept dying on the scene over and over and over again for like 3 hours, and it wasn't fun. I can get through the stage easily, I can do everything else fine, it's just it has this grab move that I can't beat, and it kills me every single stupid time. Now I know the weakness to this boss, which is the recipe of get good, and unfortunately I don't have it, so I just kept dying and dying and dying. Oh my gosh, this was so frustrating. Honestly, I found this game much more difficult than Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3 so far, and oh man.
I want someone to take me to the hospital. You sure about that?
And that's all I was going to do. I was going to make a small little video showing you how bad I am at this game, let you know that I bought it, but I'm probably not going to complete it. And then a friend on Twitter tells me, hey, that jumping attack is actually a thrust attack, and you can jump right on top of it just like you did with the other enemies. And I'm just kind of like, what? So I went back. It still took me 30 minutes, but I did manage to beat this boss, so at least I'm happy to feel that I overcame this challenge, but I don't know if I'm going to finish the game, but I'm at least happy that I conquered this demon so that I'm not walking away from the game if that's what I decide to do, and still have a boss that beat me, so I don't know if that makes any sense.
After watching the video, you'll recall Gaijin's words,
and if you're in for a difficult game, then you're going to love this, but if you're like me, and you get really frustrated, it might be a little bit too difficult for you, because honestly I think I'm going to stop playing it because I just don't have the time given my lifestyle and also just my skill at these types of games. I do like the game. I'm not blaming it at all. It's more on me.
Remember, this is Gaijin, the same gamer who effortlessly defeats monsters in Monster Hunter. To achieve that, two crucial things are necessary: familiarity with the weapons and an understanding of the monsters. Both require patience and tenacity, qualities not much different from what you'd expect from someone who excels in the Souls games.
Number 9, Valor Charge Blade. I use this style especially when I have to go back to high rank to farm monsters for parts. Once you go into Valor mode, you get this new combo with the A button that basically allows you to just go absolutely bonkers on the monster. It's really great stress relief, really. I mean, just look at this and tell me that's not fun.
As expected, Gaijin did not give up, and he reached the stage of having some confidence that he can proceed with the game. As I mentioned earlier, I went through the same two stages. Initially, I experienced self-doubt, and later, I harbored hope that I could continue. At this point, if a difficulty slider existed in the game, both Gaijin and I likely utilized that switch to overcome our self-doubt and enhance our budding self-confidence. However, an easy mode toggle was absent. There was no switch, only the determination to persist. Here is the second video of Gaijin titled "It Finally Clicked."
I don't know if I'm going to finish the game. I don't know if I'm going to finish the game. And then I found Vaati's video. Honestly, I wanted to give you a quick update that on hour 9 of the 10-hour limit I was giving myself to enjoy the game before putting it down, it finally clicked, and all thanks to Vaati and some others online. I'll put a link to the video that saved me down in the description below. The issue I see it was not mainly about me needing to get good, it was that my approach was simply wrong. This game in general is a little bit counterintuitive, not just to Dark Souls, but in action games in general. Your default reaction to an attack should be to stand your ground and deflect it, unless it's marked by a kanji, in which case you can jump over it or do a counter skill if you feel confident. Dashing is about positioning, but it's not something you actually want to use that much because it's very tricky and the game will sometimes cheat just to punish you for trying to dash past an attack that you were meant to counter or jump over. I took the early game farming location from Vaati's video, I unlocked the core skills that he mentioned, and by proactively simply spamming L1 and standing my ground and pretty much just attacking after every enemy attack sequence played out, I found a lot of success. Plus, I didn't realize that you can hold down the dash button to run, and that really changed the game. In my head, the health bar was the main thing I wanted to deplete, and if you were stylish and skilled enough, you could ignore completely and just max out the posture damage bar for an instant kill. But in reality, it's kind of the opposite. Each time you attack and they block, it's posture damage. Each attack you deflect is posture damage. Just get that bar to max and you're done. Anyways, I'm still trying to get the hang of things, but I wanted to give you a quick update that I am still playing the game and I'm slowly starting to get it, and I haven't given up yet.
What's truly interesting about Gaijin's second video is how he credited Vaati for helping him overcome the stage of self-doubt. This is interesting because what Vaati did for Gaijin had similarly done for hundreds and thousands of Monster Hunter players who were experiencing self-doubt about learning and mastering a game more complex than any existing Souls game. As mentioned earlier, mastering a weapon in Monster Hunter is comparable to learning to play a musical instrument. I personally learned how to play Monster Hunter by watching Gaijin's videos. It's fascinating that even a skilled gamer like him, having mastered Monster Hunter, sought the support of other knowledgeable players to bolster his self-confidence. Now, revisiting the notion of an imaginary easy mode toggle, if it existed, Gaijin wouldn't have required or sought help from others, because it wouldn't have been necessary. Satisfied needs don't motivate, and there would be no reason for Gaijin to delve deeper into researching the game if he could simply breeze through it by toggling an easy mode. Finally, here is Gaijin's last video regarding the stages he went through in mastering Sekiro, the triumphant stage titled, I Did It.
15 days since I started playing Sekiro, 47 hours and 48 minutes later, I've beaten the game, achieving the true ending and having missed only one optional boss that I know of. In this video, I want to talk about my experience, the ups and downs, and my final thoughts on the game. I don't want to give away any spoilers because the game just came out like 2 weeks ago, so this is going to be more like a podcast style video with some trailers on loop. Overall thoughts. I really enjoyed the game, and like how I almost gave up Monster Hunter when I first started playing it and I didn't get it, I'm happy that I stuck through it all. It was a thrilling game experience, one that has given me some of my top frustrated moments ever, and some of my favorite accomplishments as well. Lengthwise, it actually felt pretty juicy to me. Perhaps that's because you die a lot and there's a lot of trial and error, but it kind of felt sort of like the same length as Bloodborne did, if that's any reference for you. The story itself I thought was serviceable. I really liked the Japanese voice acting in particular for this game, so I went with that as the audio and the English as subtitles, so shout out to FromSoftware for having that option. The English voices I just really wasn't feeling, plus this material kind of begs for Japanese language to be used anyways. I won't give away any story spoilers, but let's just say that this is definitely a FromSoftware game. Like their other games, if you don't mind spoilers, there's a lot of hidden stuff in this game to find. Lots of optional bosses, some really cool side quests with some very interesting rewards. I used online guides, and overall I'm very happy that I did, otherwise I feel I would have missed a lot. Overall, I really liked it. The game is great. Super difficult until you can understand the rhythm of the gameplay and the right approach, but satisfyingly difficult afterwards, at least for me. If you like FromSoftware games, you may already have this or you're planning on getting it, but if not, it might be worth considering, but just make sure you dedicate time to understand how to play the game, and do be prepared to die for several hours in a row on some bosses. Just know that all the experience that you get through those failures will definitely become your strength as you go on, because they did a very good job of designing these walls in the game to make you master one of the core components in the game's combat, so consider it kind of a boot camp preparing you for what's next. The game has a way that it wants to be played though, so if the idea of blocking and even parrying attacks here and there really turns you off, then you might not like the game. That being said, once you approach it by standing your ground and using the guard button to learn the rhythm of the attacks and then discover after which sequence you can punish the enemy, the game does get a lot easier. They did a good job of keeping the actual mechanics of the game quite simple, and once you approach it this way, you'll realize how forgiving it can be as well. And what I mean is that your guard is like on the second that you press the button. It even warns you when an unblockable attack is coming, and even if your posture is broken from guarding, just roll evade and you're fine. You know, there is some reason why players are calling this kind of like a rhythm game, because enemies attack in verses, and your job is to know when those start and end. EpicNameBro put it really well when he was tweeting about the game and said, if you feel that this game requires really quick reactions, it's because you don't understand the game. And indeed, I applied this principle when I was playing and I found great success. If I found myself saying, look, I know what to do, but the timing is just way too severe, then I was probably going about it the wrong way or even the hard way. A little change of approach, and usually I was able to get it after some practice. All this being said though, the game is really difficult overall, and that is where the satisfaction comes from. The difficulty debate. There's been a lot of debate online concerning the difficulty of the game and if it should have an easy mode added to it or not. First off, let's not mix this conversation up with accessibility features, which are more for disabled gamers and are always a good thing. For those who passionately stand against the idea of an easy mode, this is where they're coming from. This game is the vision of the developer, so demanding they add an easy option is kinda ridiculous because you're telling the artist what to make. The main thing FromSoftware here is trying to achieve is to give the player a sense of thrill for overcoming something that seemed impossible. To this extent, an easy mode would not only make it so that the game is not being played as intended, but it also goes against the core design philosophy of the game itself, which is its difficulty. But that's the thing. With no options, they only have one model player in mind to judge what is doable and what is not, what is difficult and what is impossible. I think FromSoftware did a fantastic job here of figuring out what the average gamer can achieve and really pushing them to their limits. But what about the other half of gamers who have issues with things that the average person may not find so hard? To them, the difficulty in this game could just make it flat out unplayable, and that's not good. The more people who can enjoy a game, the better. The game already includes options that make it more challenging and difficult for those who want it, so I think having the flip side would be a nice thing as well. After all, difficulty sliders in a single player game affects no one but the player and what they get out of the product. For me personally, I actually shed tears after beating the last boss. My hands were shaking, and I think it's a moment I'll treasure for the rest of my gaming career. I'm thankful for the moment, and I do think that I may have been seduced by the option of an easier mode and would have missed out on this experience had it been there. But of course, if that was the case, it would be on me and not the game.
One memorable line from his video that deeply resonated with me is what Gaijin said.
For me personally, I actually shed tears after beating the last boss. My hands were shaking, and I think it's a moment I'll treasure for the rest of my gaming career. I'm thankful for the moment, and I do think that I may have been seduced by the option of an easier mode and would have missed out on this experience had it been there.
In my case, up to this day, what I still consider the greatest achievement of my life is defeating Amygdala in the Defiled Chalice dungeon. That statement has no meaning for anyone, but that is the beauty of the Souls games. It rewards us with that kind of experience you can never find elsewhere. They allow us to face mythical creatures and triumph against them if we're willing to pursue those extraordinary moments. In this last section, we will cover the months leading up to the 2019 Game Awards. 1 week after the release, PlayStation unveiled Sekiro's Accolades trailer. One month after the release, Yen Press announced a collaboration with FromSoftware to create a brand new manga by Shin Yamamoto based on the story and world of Sekiro. Here's a trailer for the manga titled Hanbei the Undying.
I see bad moon rising. I see trouble on the way. I see earthquakes and lightning. I see bad times.
Finally, on December 12, 2019, the much-awaited Game Awards took place, where Sekiro was among the contenders for Game of the Year. It was up against Hideo Kojima's latest game, Death Stranding, considered the strongest candidate to win the award.
Now, she's an actress and producer. Please welcome Michelle Rodriguez.
How y'all doing today? I'm happy to be here. There's one last game announcement to share with you tonight, and I'm really excited about it. Allow me to present the world premiere of our latest expansion to the Fast and Furious saga.
I'm going to split. It's the only way to keep you both safe.
I think I know someone who can help.
Hustle never stops, I got no brakes.
You ready to ride?
I'm in a high speed chasing, can none of y'all catch me. I'm faster than anybody that's running to kiss me. I'ma get what I deserve and I'm coming fast. And I'm always number one, I never come in last.
You want revenge. We want justice.
We're gonna jump onto a moving train?
I got you! Jump!
And that's why I'm in first place and
Oh, you gotta be kidding me!
When in doubt, do what I do.
I've seen what you do. That's why I'm kind of terrified.
And I don't need a finish line, I'm in my own lane.
Do you want to stay amateurs? Or take this to the next level?
I'm excited for that one. Can you believe it's been like 18 years, man? From a little article in a newspaper to a movie to a video game. It's pretty cool. I'd like to now introduce a surprise guest and also one of my friends for life, Vin Diesel.
Wait a minute. Do not tempt me. Michelle, we are in our crowd.
I know, man. Gamers.
We have been gamers forever, and we are at an award show of our people.
Literally. Me and Vin used to just like literally spend all night playing like Tekken fighter games or Street Fighter. Nuts.
Yeah, this is, it's amazing to see that trailer finally.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you a secret too, I didn't tell you before. Yesterday I saw the 4-minute trailer to Fast 9. It's insane. Back to you guys. I love all of you. Okay, so here to pay tribute to all of the nominees for Game of the Year, once again, the Game Awards Orchestra.
And they keep telling me don't lean down. As my daughter would say, Dad, take over your fear. And the Game of the Year award goes to Sekiro.
Tonight, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice also wins Best Action Adventure Game.
Thank you so much. ありがとうございます。すごく驚いてますし、感激してます。
He's very moved.
セキロ、我々としてはですね、新しい挑戦とか、尖った部分を含んだタイトルだったので、作ってる間すごく不安だったんですけれども、こう素晴らしい賞をいただけて、すごく驚いてますし、すごく今興奮してます。
So, Sekiro has a lot of difficult and complex elements that made us a little unsure when it was about to come out, and we were both surprised and overjoyed at the reaction that we saw.
一緒に苦労してくれたフロムソフトのスタッフ、そして素晴らしいサポートをしてくれたアクティビジョンの皆さんと共にですね、喜びを分かち合いたいと思います。
So I'd like to share the joy of receiving this award with the staff at FromSoftware, who pulled out all the stops to make it happen, as well as the team at Activision for their ongoing support throughout.
で、最後にプレイしてくれた多くのユーザーさんに本当に大きな感謝を伝えたいです。皆さんのおかげで我々ゲーム作れてます。また面白いゲーム作るつもりなので、ぜひ期待してください。
And finally, I'd like to give out a huge thank you to our players. We couldn't have done it without you, and it was a huge honor to make. So we will continue to try and make the best games we possibly can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations, FromSoftware, Miyazaki-san, Game of the Year for Sekiro. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for the Game Awards 2019. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next December to keep celebrating games. Have a great night. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
More than a year after Sekiro's release, the game received an update introducing several new additions. These include the Reflection of Strength and Gauntlet of Strength game modes, which are Sekiro's equivalent of a boss rush mode. Here is the trailer for the Game of the Year edition. As a final note on the making of Sekiro, a host asked Miyazaki about his future games, saying, "Please tell us about your plans after Sekiro. In a previous interview, you mentioned that there were 2.5 to 3.5 games in the pipeline." Miyazaki shared, "Yes, there have been 3 major projects in the works. Of those, 0.5 became Deira Senei, 1.0 is Sekiro, and the remaining 2.0 are undisclosed titles. As for games like Dark Souls Remastered and Metal Wolf Chaos XD, they are handled by external companies, so we don't count them within the 3.5 titles." The host followed up, "So, you mean there are currently 2 undisclosed titles in development?" Miyazaki agreed, "Yes, that's correct. While I can't go into details at this time, both are games that bear the FromSoftware touch. It will take a little more time, but we will gradually reveal them to everyone once they take shape."